I was reborn 1 second before I fell into the water. I snatched the jade pendant back from my half-sister's hand. When she reached out to shove me, I used her force to turn sideways and sent her tumbling into the pond instead. Only when the freezing water had flooded my nose and mouth in my previous life did I learn that people truly could see their past before death. I had seen myself dragged ashore, my clothes soaked through and my hair in disarray, while guests throughout the garden pointed and whispered. My half-sister Chenrujia had been wrapped in my cloak. She clutched the Qingluan jade pendant my mother had left me and wept pitifully. Elder sister pushed me into the water because she wanted the pendant, she sobbed. I do not blame her, I only beg her not to resent me anymore. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but my father, Chen Hongru, slapped me to the ground. My stepmother, Madame Liu, gathered Chen Rajia into her arms with reddened eyes. Her voice was gentle as a knife. Chongning, Rajia is your younger sister. How could you be so cruel? After that day, my reputation was destroyed. My fiancé Lu Jingheng broke off our engagement and soon became close to Chen Rujia. With that pendant, she falsely claimed to be the girl who had saved the regent, Xiao Chengyuan, many years earlier. Protected by the regent's residence, she enjoyed limitless glory. I was imprisoned in a neglected courtyard of the Marquis of Yongning's residence. My mother's dowry was swallowed up. My loyal maid, Qingdai, died miserably. My maternal family, the Duke of Zhengguo's household, was implicated in an old military grain case and condemned despite their innocence. On the night I died, Chen Rujia stood before my bed in a gold-woven gown. She bent down, pinching the Qingluan jade pendant between her fingers, and smiled with soft malice. Elder sister, did you think all I stole was a piece of jade? I stole the life your mother left you. She also told me that my mother Shen Mingtang had never died of illness. The moment she finished speaking, I breathed my last. When I opened my eyes again, familiar water sounds filled my ears. The late spring breeze crossed the waterside pavilion of the Marquis's residence and wrinkled the lake's surface. Chen Rojia stood before me, her eyes slightly red, and a green jade pendant clutched in her hand. Elder sister mother, clearly gave this pendant to me. Why do you insist it belongs to you? My fingers trembled violently. This was not a dream. I had come back to the moment before I fell into the water, the moment when my entire fate had first been stolen. Seeing me silent, Chen Rujia's eyes flashed with triumph. She retreated half a step, positioning herself beside the pond. In my previous life, she had done the same thing. She had deliberately taken my pendant, lured me to the water's edge to fight over it, then pushed me into the pond when I lost control. Afterward, she accused me of trying to harm her. Footsteps approached outside the pavilion. Someone praised the elegance of the Marquis's garden. Several noble women and young ladies had come to attend the old Madame's birthday banquet. In my previous life I had cared only about the pendant, and had not noticed them drawing near. This time I lowered my eyes and laughed softly. Chenrujia stiffened. What are you laughing at, elder sister? I raised my gaze. My voice was not loud, but it carried clearly enough for the people outside the pavilion to hear. I am laughing at how bold you are. Her expression changed. I stepped forward and seized her wrist. She struggled by instinct, exposing the Qingluan jade pendant in her palm. The green jade was warm and lustrous, and a faint Qingluan motif had been carved into one corner. My mother had hung it around my neck with her own hands before she died. The instant I touched it, the hatred I had suppressed for 2 lifetimes almost burst from my throat. But I did not lose control. I twisted her wrist and reclaimed the pendant. Chen Rujia cried out in pain. At the same time, her other hand was already thrusting toward my shoulder, the same hand that had pushed me in my previous life. I turned aside, caught her arm, and leaned close enough to whisper where only she could hear. In this life, the one who reaches out first should be the one to learn how cold the water is. Her palm struck toward my shoulder. I shifted to the side, caught her wrist bone, and pulled it outward. Unable to stop her own momentum, the back of her knees struck the pond's stone rim. With a splash, Chenrujia fell into the water. Water flew everywhere. She screamed, "Help! Elder sister pushed me. Elder sister is trying to kill me." The footsteps outside the pavilion stopped abruptly. I did not panic, nor did I jump in to save her. I merely held the pendant tightly and stood at the water's edge, watching her flail. In my previous life, Madame Liu had sent away every servant who knew how to swim. I had struggled for a long time before an outer courtyard page dragged me ashore, by which time my clothes were disheveled and my hairstyle had come completely undone. The moment I had awakened in this life, however, I had scanned my surroundings. The women who could swim were hiding behind the artificial hill. I raised my voice. "Someone come quickly. Second young lady stole the late Madame's keepsake." After I caught her, she panicked and accidentally fell into the water. "Hurry and save her. Stole a pendant and then slipped? One of the noble women murmured outside. I thought I heard eldest young lady ask how she dared, Chenrujia cried even harder. No. Elder sister pushed me. I bent down to look at her. My voice trembled, not with fear but with grievance deliberately drawn over rage sharpened by 2 lifetimes. You were caught holding my mother's keepsake. If you were not guilty, why did you back toward the pond by yourself? She froze. At that moment, a servant woman jumped into the water and pulled her out. Chenrujia was soaked, her hair disordered, and her face deathly pale. The humiliation I had suffered in my previous life had now landed on her, exactly as it had once landed on me. She collapsed on the ground and wailed, Elder sister, how could you be so cruel? I only wanted to look at the pendant. Look at it? I interrupted, raising the pendant. My mother's keepsake was locked in a hidden compartment of my dressing case. How did you obtain it? The surroundings went silent. Chenrojia's sobs caught in her throat. I gave her no time to recover. The key to that compartment was beneath my pillow. I discovered it missing only this morning. Since you claim the pendant is yours, explain in front of all these ladies when my mother, Shen Mingtang, gave her keepsake to you. Someone inhaled sharply. Chenrojia's face turned white and her tears fell faster. I do not know Only what? A cool male voice came from the other side of the pavilion. I turned and saw a man standing beneath the bamboo shadows. He wore a black brocade robe, embroidered with silver cloud patterns, with a pale jade ornament hanging at his waist. His face was handsome and austere, not the frail elegance of a scholar, but the restrained sharpness of someone long accustomed to power. When his eyes turned toward us, they resembled a moon reflected in a frozen pool. Chao Qingyuan, regent of the great Yao dynasty. He was also the man whom Chenrojia had deceived in my previous life, by using my pendant and claiming credit for saving his life. My fingers tightened slightly. Xiao Chengyuan's gaze rested on the pendant in my palm for a breath before moving to Chenrojia. She clearly recognized him. Her body trembled, and her cries became even softer and more pitiful. Your Highness, please judge fairly. Elder sister pushed me into the water, Xiao Chengyuan said calmly. I saw you reach out to push her. Chenrojia jerked her head up. The entire pavilion fell silent. He said no more to her. Instead, he looked at me. Eldest young lady Chen, where did you obtain this pendant? I met his gaze and curtsied. Your Highness. It was my late mother's keepsake and has been with me since childhood. His eyes darkened, making his thoughts difficult to read. I knew that I had finally torn the first thread of fate out of Chenrojia's hands. She knelt on the wet flagstones and for the first time showed genuine panic. Madame Liu arrived while Chenrojia was wrapped in a cloak provided by a maid. At the sight of her daughter, the color drained from her face. She rushed over. Rujia, my child, how did this happen? Her cry was so shrill that one might have thought the person who had fallen into the water had already lost half her life. I stood where I was and watched the familiar scene, my lips slowly flattening. It had been the same in my previous life. Madame Liu held Chenrojia and wept. My father scolded me for being vicious. No one asked why I had fallen in. No one saw that the pendant around my neck had disappeared. All the tears, sympathy, and supposed justice had been given to Chenrojia. This time, no matter how moving Madame Liu's tears were, they could not conceal that her daughter had stolen the pendant first. After crying over Chenrojia, Madame Liu raised her eyes to me. A flash like a knife passed through them before instantly changing into heartache. Changning, your younger sister is frail. She merely borrowed your pendant for a look. How could you push her into the water? You are the elder sister. Have you forgotten all the tolerance and kindness I taught you? With a single speech, she turned theft into borrowing, a calculated trap into a quarrel between sisters, and placed the charge of being unfilial on my head. I lowered my lashes. My eyes reddened at once. I had never been skilled at pretending to be pitiful, but after years in the neglected courtyard watching them turn tears into weapons, I should have learned long ago. I stepped back, my voice trembling softly. Mother is right. I am the elder sister and should be tolerant. But may I ask one thing? My birth mother's final keepsake was stolen from the hidden compartment of my dressing case. Am I not even allowed to ask about it? Madame Li's expression stiffened. The noble women's gazes settled on her. I continued. Raojia says she merely borrowed it, but my dressing case was locked and the key was under my pillow. If she only wished to look, why did she not ask me? Why did she open it secretly while I was away? Chenrojia cried. I did not steal the key. Qingdai gave it to me. Behind me, Qingdai's face went white. In my previous life, this was how she had been dragged into the matter. Chenrojia accused her of stealing the pendant and sowing discord between the sisters. Madame Liu ordered her beaten 30 strokes. Qingdai did not survive. She developed a fever and died that night. I turned and placed myself in front of Qingdai. You say Qingdai gave you the key. Do you have proof? Chen Rojia bit her lip. She is your maid, of course she will side with you. Without proof it is slander. I cut in. I looked at Madame Liu. Mother has managed this household for many years and values rules above all. A servant betraying her mistress is a grave offense. Is it not also a violation of the rules for a young lady to accuse a servant without evidence? Anger finally showed in Madame Liu's eyes. She had not expected me to use the household rules against her. Before she could speak, Xiao Chengyuan, who had remained silent, said, "This is a private matter of the Marquis's household, and it is not my place to interfere." However, second young lady Chen did reach out to push someone. Eldest young lady Chen avoided her, and she fell into the water because of her own momentum. That statement mattered. I did not need everyone to see me take revenge. I needed everyone to see that Chenrojia had attacked first. In my previous life, I had lost because there were no witnesses, no evidence, and no one willing to hear my defense in this life. Even if hatred burned in my throat, I would make every move justified and beyond reproach. Xiao Chengyuan's voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. Madame Liu's expression froze. Chenrojia raised her head, wet hair clinging to her face, miserable and pitiful. "Your Highness, I did not." His gaze swept over her like snow. "I did not ask you." Her face flushed scarlet. I lowered my head to hide a flicker of satisfaction. It was not that he had defended me at length. That single sentence was enough to block Madame Liu from declaring me guilty. The old madam was soon invited over. She was elderly and rarely handled household affairs, but she cared deeply about the Marquis's reputation. Seeing so many people gathered at the pavilion, she looked furious. "What happened here?" Madame Liu was about to speak, but I knelt first. "Grandmother, I have been unfilial and disturbed our honored guests. But this concerns my late mother's keepsake and the rules of our household. I have no choice but to beg grandmother for justice." I presented the pendant in both hands. "This is the Qingluan Jade Pendant my mother left me. Today it appeared in my younger sister's hands. She not only claimed it belonged to her, but also accused Qingdai of stealing the key. If the matter is not investigated today, by tomorrow the capital will be saying that the legitimate daughter of the Marquis of Yongning fought her half-sister over a pendant and tried to harm her." At the mention of a scandal involving the household, the old madam's eyelid twitched. She looked toward Madame Liu. "Investigate," Madame Liu said softly. "Mother Rujia has had a terrible fright. Why not let her return and change first?" I raised my head just as tears fell from my eyes. "Grandmother, I was frightened when Rujia fell in as well, but if we do not investigate now, nothing will be clear after the guests disperse." Xiao Chengyuan's gaze seemed to rest on my face for an instant. The old madam said coldly, "Search eldest young lady's courtyard and investigate everyone who entered or left today." Servants hurried away. Chenrojia shivered from the cold, her face growing whiter. Madame Liu held her while gripping her arm tightly. I knew they were afraid. Before long, the servants returned carrying a small brass key and half of a broken incense stick. "Old madam, there are signs that the lock on eldest young lady's dressing case was forced." The key was found in the sleeve pouch of second young lady's personal maid. We also found half a stick of sleep-inducing incense beneath the window. Chenrujia's maid dropped to her knees. "Madam, spare me." Second young lady only wanted to see the pendant. I did not know it would become such a serious matter. Chenrojia screamed. "You are lying." Madame Liu's face went pale. "Wretched servant, you stole from your master and now dare to implicate her?" I looked at the maid. Her name was Chuntao. In my previous life she had given false testimony that Qingdai stole the pendant. In this life the key had been found on her instead, making her the discarded pawn. I said softly, "If Rujia only wanted to look at the pendant, why did her maid carry drugged incense? Was the plan to make me fall asleep and then take it?" Chuntao trembled. Madame Liu snapped, "Changning, your sister is still ill. Must you drive her to her death?" I looked up. "Mother, what a strange thing to say. My sister stole the object. Her maid carried the drugged incense. I was the one pushed toward the pond and I was almost falsely accused. How did I become the one persecuting her?" Low voices rose around us. "She is right, that explanation makes no sense. How could a concubine-born daughter secretly take the legitimate daughter's late mother's keepsake? If the regent had not testified, it might truly have been impossible to determine what happened." The whispers struck Madame Liu and Chenrojia like needles. Chenrojia finally broke down and nearly fainted from crying. Afraid the matter would spread further, the old madam gritted her teeth. Chuntao stole from her mistress, beat her 20 strokes and sell her out of the household. Second young lady failed to control her servant. Confine her for half a month and make her copy admonitions for women 20 times. No one is to speak of today's events outside. The punishment was not severe. I had expected that. The household would not heavily punish Kenrujia over one pendant, especially while she still wore the mask of a delicate, virtuous girl. But it was enough in the first round. I did not need her dead. I needed everyone to see that Chenrojia was not the innocent White Lotus she pretended to be. I needed Qingdai alive. I needed the pendant back in my hand. The old madam dismissed everyone, and the noble women and young ladies began to leave. Before Xiao Chengyuan departed, he paused beside me. Eldest young lady Chen, I lowered my eyes. Your Highness, keep the pendant safe. My heart gave a small leap, he continued. Once something has been stolen, you should learn that not everyone deserves to touch it. I looked up. His expression remained indifferent, as though it were a casual remark. But I knew he was warning me, perhaps testing me. I tightened my grip on the pendant. Thank you for the warning, Your Highness, I will remember. After he left, Qingdai dropped to her knees before me, her eyes red. My lady had not stealed the key, I truly did not. I helped her up. She had been only 17 when she died in my previous life. In the middle of the night, burning with fever, she had clutched my sleeve and said, My lady, I did not betray you. Now she stood alive before me. I took her cold hand and said softly, I know. Qingdai froze. I looked at Chuntao being dragged away, then at Madame Lu supporting Chenrojia as they left. Qingdai, beginning today, we will investigate everyone in our courtyard one by one. She wiped her tears and nodded firmly. When I returned to my room, I noticed a thin scratch beside the dressing case. The same mark had existed in my previous life, though I had never paid attention to it. I opened the case and placed the pendant in my palm. In the eye of the Qingluan carved on its back, there seemed to be a faint speck of golden light. I pressed it gently with the pad of my finger, but nothing happened. Yet I remembered what Chenrujia had said before I died. The pendant contained the life my mother had left me. If that was true, I would search slowly. Eventually, I would find the answer. After Chenrujia was confined, Madame Lu remained quiet for 3 days. On the surface, the Marquis's residence was calm. In my courtyard, however, we discovered 3 disloyal servants. A rough workwoman passed information to Madame Lu's courtyard every other day. A second-rank maid had searched through my letters. Another young maid responsible for the incense burner had hidden half a packet of drugged incense ash among my mother's old clothes. Qingdai was so angry that she nearly cried. They live on your monthly allowance and take their wages from you. How can they still harm you? I looked at the servants kneeling in a row without much surprise. In my previous life, I had been far too foolish. I believed that if I treated others generously, they would remember my kindness. Only later did I understand that kindness without an edge in an inner household was simply soft flesh offered for others to tear apart. I ordered Qingdai to bring the account books. Write down every detail from these years. My courtyard's monthly allowance, rewards, charcoal, medicine, who handled each item, who received it and how much was withheld. The women's expressions changed. One of the bolder servants protested. Eldest young lady, I merely obeyed Madame's instructions. Did Madame instruct you to steal from your mistress? She choked on her reply. I set down my teacup. Under the household rules, a servant who betrays and steals from her master is to be sold. If drugged incense is involved, she is to be handed to the authorities. At the words handed to the authorities, several servants collapsed. Madame Lu might keep them alive inside the residence, but once they were turned over to the law, their families could also be implicated. Someone soon confessed. Matron Zhao from Madame Lu's courtyard had provided the incense. Chuntao had stolen the key. Someone had also made a duplicate key to my mother's old storage chests. My fingers tightened. The maid involved in the storage chests kowtowed. I do not know what was inside, Matron Zhao. Only said Madame was searching for an old account book. An old account book? I slowly rose. In my previous life, I learned only after being exiled to the neglected courtyard that Madame Liu had swallowed nearly all of my mother's dowry. By the time I tried to investigate, no one would speak for me. If she was already searching for the account book in this life, it meant the book was still somewhere inside the residence. My mother had left me more than the pendant. Qingdai, bring every storage chest my mother left behind. 27 redwood chests were carried from the depths of the storeroom into my courtyard. Dust covered their lids, and some of the copper locks had rusted. My throat tightened as I looked at them. I had been 8 when my mother died. That winter, she had reclined on a couch with an account book in her hands, teaching me to recognize the names of her shops. I had not wanted to learn. I had cared only about the snow outside the window. She had smiled and stroked my hair. Changning, a woman may love flowers, snow, and beautiful clothes, but she must also keep accounts in her own hands. I had asked, Mother, why must a woman learn accounting? Because accounts do not lie. When a woman has control of her own accounts, she can feel secure. I had not understood then. Only after I had knelt throughout the Marquis's residence, and no one would give me even a bowl of hot medicine, did I understand far too late. King Dai pried open the first chest. It contained old clothes and brocade that had lain at the bottom for years. The second held jewelry cases. The third contained paintings and calligraphy. In the seventh chest, I found a false panel beneath the lining. I crouched down and gently worked a silver hairpin along its edge. With a click, the panel lifted, revealing half of a yellowed account book. King Dai exclaimed, "My lady, we found it!" I opened it. My mother's handwriting was neat and graceful. 3 estates in Jiangnan, 12 storefronts in Jinling, 1 apothecary in the capital, 20 bolts of shoe brocade, 2 cases of Eastern pearls, 80,000 taels in silver. With every page I turned, my heart grew colder. I had seen none of these things in my previous life. Madame Liu had said my mother had been ill for years, and that her dowry had been consumed by medical expenses. Father had said a woman should not fuss over material possessions, and that being raised by the Marquis's household was already a blessing. A blessing. My finger stopped at the name of the capital apothecary, Renji Hall. Chenrojia had mentioned that name before I died. She said the final medicine my mother drank had been delivered from Renji Hall. But the account book clearly showed that Renji Hall had been my mother's dowry property. If it was her own shop, its prescriptions, medicinal ingredients, and manager should all have been trustworthy. How then had a slow poison killed her? I was about to continue reading when a servant announced from outside, "Eldest young lady, madam is here." Qingdai's expression changed. Someone must have reported to her. I closed the account book, tucked it into my sleeve, and left several unimportant ledgers on the table. When Madame Liu entered, her gaze immediately swept over the storage chests. She smiled gently. "Changning, I heard you were sorting these chests today. Why did you not tell me? These old things have been stored for years. What if you damage them?" I rose and bowed. "Precisely because they belong to my mother. I must inventory them personally." Madame Liu walked to the table, casually picked up one of the ledgers and turned through it. "You are young and do not understand these matters. I have managed your mother's dowry for you all these years. When you marry, everything will naturally be handed over to you." I smiled. "Then may I trouble mother to let me see the general ledger first?" Her hand stopped. She looked up. "What did you say?" "I am already of marriageable age. It is time I learned to manage my own dowry. Mother has handled it for so many years, so the accounts must be clear. I only wish to look once so that I know what I possess." The smile on her face faded slightly. "Changning, do you not trust me in my previous life?" That question had been enough to silence me. I feared being called unfilial. I feared father saying I was unreasonable. I feared others accusing me of disrespecting my stepmother. Now I found it laughable. "Mother misunderstands me. It is because I trust you that I dare ask to see the accounts. If I did not, I would ask grandfather to send someone from the Shin family to investigate." Her expression changed completely. My maternal grandfather, the old Duke of Zhengguo, was the person she feared most. She had dared mistreat me all these years, only because the Marquis's household blocked information, and because I had been stupid enough never to seek help from my mother's family. She stared at me for a moment before suddenly smiling. "You truly have changed since falling into the water." I smiled as well. A person who walks once past the gates of death ought to learn something. Coldness flashed in her eyes. "I will have the general ledger delivered tomorrow. But your sister caught a chill after falling into the water and still has a high fever. If you have any concern for her, you should visit. Otherwise, people may say you have no affection for your sister." There it was. She wanted to use Chenrojia's feigned illness to drag me back into guilt and accusations of being unfilial. I lowered my head. "Mother is right. Since Rajia is ill, I should visit her." Madame Liu's expression eased. I added, "I will take the household physician with me. If she truly became ill from the water, I should apologize as her elder sister. If not, then at least no one can use her illness to damage her reputation." Madame Liu's smile stiffened. I ignored her and instructed Qingdai, "Invite the household physician. Also ask Matron Zhou from grandmother's courtyard to accompany us. Second young lady's health is precious. We must not be careless." Half an hour later, I arrived at Chenrojia's courtyard with the physician and Matron Zhou. Chenrojia lay on a couch with a cloth over her forehead, and her cheeks flushed. She looked delicate and weak. At the sight of me, her tears fell first. "Elder sister, you finally came to see me." I sat beside the bed and held her hand. "You are so ill, of course I am concerned." "Physician, please examine second young lady." Her fingers shrank slightly. The physician stepped forward and checked her pulse. After a moment his expression became strange. Matron Zhou asked, "How is second young lady?" He hesitated. Her pulse is steady. It does not resemble a severe chill or high fever, rather. It seems she took a small amount of medicine that induces fever. The room fell silent. The frailty on Chenrujia's face almost cracked apart. I gently tightened my hold on her hand and leaned over to tuck in her quilt. My voice was tender. If you wanted me to visit, you only had to say so. Why injure your own body? Matron Zhou's expression darkened. I knew this would soon reach the old madam's ears. From that day onward, the reputation of Chenrujia as a girl who feigned illness for attention would begin to take root. As I rose to leave, she suddenly grabbed my sleeve. There was no weakness in her eyes now, only resentment. Chen Changning, did you do this on purpose? I looked down at her. Her voice dropped. You were never like this before. I slowly withdrew my sleeve. People change. Rujia. Outside the courtyard, dusk pressed heavily over the roof lines of the Marquis's residence. Qingdai followed beside me and whispered, My lady, you were incredible today. I did not smile. The half-account book in my sleeve felt heavy, like a blade my mother had passed to me across the boundary between life and death. A thin slip of paper had been tucked inside its final page. 6 characters were written on it. The Qingluan Jade Pendant must never leave your person. That night I held the pendant in my palm and examined it again in the candlelight. The golden glimmer in the Qingluan's eye was extremely faint. It brightened only slightly when I remembered my mother's voice before her death. It did not seem like a divine object. It was more like a key, one that would not open the door for me, but would force me to find the door myself. The old madam's birthday banquet was even more extravagant than in my previous life. Madame Liu probably hoped to use it to repair the reputation she had lost after the pond incident. She invited many noble women and deliberately allowed Chenrojia to appear despite her supposed illness. Chenrujia wore a pale pink dress and a thin layer of powder, making her look fragile and refined. As soon as she entered the flower hall, several women asked with concern whether she had recovered. She lowered her eyes. Thank you for your concern. I am much better. It is only that the pond water was so cold. At night I still dream that I am sinking beneath it. As she spoke, the corners of her eyes swept toward me. In my previous life, I would already have panicked. Today I merely raised my teacup and slowly blew the floating leaves aside. Sure enough, one of Madame Liu's friends soon sighed. A disagreement between sisters is one thing, but how could it end with someone falling into the water? Another added, an elder sister's tolerance. Behind me, Qingdai's fingertips trembled with anger. I set down my cup gently. The ladies are absolutely right. The room quieted for a moment. I rose, walked to Chenrujia, and held her hand. Since Rujia fell into the water, I have been unable to eat or sleep in peace. As so many elders are present today, perhaps everyone can witness the truth between us. Wariness flashed in Chenrujia's eyes. I nodded to Qingdai. She immediately carried forward a tray. On it lay Chuntao's confession, the damaged lock, half a stick of drugged incense, and the physician's written pulse report. The women's expressions changed. I spoke at an even pace. That day, Rujia was holding the Qingluan Jade Pendant left by my late mother. The lock on my dressing case had been forced. The key was found on her maid, and drugged incense lay beneath my window. After Rujia fell into the water, she appeared to suffer a persistent high fever, but the household physician determined that she had taken medicine to induce it. I looked at the woman who had just spoken about an elder sister's tolerance. I am foolish and would like to ask my elders a question. If someone stole your late mother's keepsake, carried drugged incense into your room, and falsely accused you afterward, how would you show tolerance? The woman's face alternated between red and white. Chenrojia's tears came at once. Elder sister, why must you humiliate me at grandmother's birthday banquet? I was already confined and admitted my mistake. Which mistake did you admit? I asked softly. Stealing the pendant or taking medicine and suggesting that I had made you gravely ill? She was immediately speechless. Madame Liu could no longer remain silent. Changning, today is your grandmother's birthday. Can nothing be discussed privately? I turned toward her, my eyes reddening. Mother says it should be discussed privately, yet on the day Rujia fell into the water, she accused me before outside guests. At today's banquet, others again criticized me before outside guests for lacking tolerance. Is it acceptable to destroy my reputation in public, but only acceptable to clear it in private? The hall became completely silent. The old madam's expression was grim, but her anger was not directed at me. She valued the household's reputation. Chenrujia had repeatedly exposed the dispute to outsiders and had touched the old madam's greatest taboo. Enough, the old madam said coldly. Rujia is unwell, send her back to rest. From now on, anyone who mentions the pond incident again will be punished under the family rules. Chenrujia was unwilling, but she could only be led away. The look she gave me before leaving seemed to want to strip flesh from bone. I lowered my gaze and pretended not to notice. The banquet continued, but no one dared use the pond incident against me again. I had just returned to my seat and raised my tea when someone spoke from behind me. Eldest young lady Chen has become quite eloquent. I turned and saw Lu Jingyang beneath the corridor. He was the heir of the Earl of Ningyuan, and the man once engaged to me. He was refined and handsome, skilled at arranging his face into an air of noble restraint. In my previous life, after my reputation was ruined, he had been the first to visit and cancel the engagement. He said I was vicious and unworthy of becoming the Lu family's daughter-in-law. Later, he married Chenruja, yet secretly sent people to my neglected courtyard to ask whether my mother's dowry still contained hidden banknotes. Now seeing him again, I felt only coldness. I curtsied. Young Lord Lu, he frowned as he looked at me. Why make matters between sisters so ugly? Rujia is still your younger sister. As the elder sister, you should be forgiving. I almost laughed. Is young Lord Lu speaking on Rujia's behalf? His expression paused. I am merely discussing the matter fairly. Then which of these does young Lord Lu consider a small matter? Stealing a late mother's keepsake, carrying drugged incense into a woman's room, taking medicine to feign illness, or slandering an elder sister? He was silenced, then said, a woman's reputation is her greatest treasure. You may have had reason to expose everything in public today, but it also made you seem overly aggressive. I looked at him. This was Lu Jingheng. He did not care who had been harmed. He cared only whether a woman was obedient, easy to control, and willing to let him stand above her and pass judgment. I smiled. Since young Lord Lu is so magnanimous, if someone steals the Earl of Ningyuan's ancestral jade, drugs you with incense, and then accuses you of improper conduct, I trust you will laugh and let it pass. His face darkened. Chen Changning, you were never such a sharp-tongued person. It was the second time I had heard that sentence today. What had I been like before? I had endured, yielded, swallowed every grievance and sacrificed myself for everyone else's appearance of harmony. But that Chen Changning had died in the neglected courtyard. Before I could answer, a quiet laugh came from outside the corridor. I turned to see Xiao Chengyuan standing beside the flowering shrubs. He had come to congratulate the old madam, with a black-clad guard behind him. Lu Jingheng's expression changed. He quickly saluted. Greetings, Your Highness. Xiao Chengyuan glanced at him. Young Lord Lu's generosity makes him well-suited to judge cases at the Ministry of Justice. When someone stabs you, you can ask whether the knife is in pain. Qingdai could not suppress a laugh. Lu Jingheng's face flushed red. I lowered my eyes to hide my own amusement. Xiao Chengyuan turned to me. Eldest young lady Chen, I saluted. Your Highness, I have a keepsake that must be returned to you. The guard presented a thin brocade box. I opened it and found an old medical classic with a yellowed cover, as though it had been taken from the depths of an archive. A plain note lay between the pages. Do you still remember what happened at the cold pool? My breath caught. Before my death, Chen Rujia had said that the pendant was the token by which the regent sought his benefactor. Only then had I learned that, when I was young, I once accompanied my mother to offer incense at Fahua Temple. On the way, I saved a boy who had fallen into a freezing pool. That boy was Xiao Chengyuan. I had also been injured and developed a high fever, so the memory became blurred. Later, once the pendant was stolen, Chen Rojia stole the credit for the rescue as well. I looked from the brocade box to Xiao Chengyuan. He did not press me, only waited quietly. I said, there are things I no longer remember clearly. There is no hurry, he replied. Say as much as you remember. If you do not wish to speak, you need not. Something in my heart stirred faintly. Across 2 lifetimes, too many people had forced me to explain, forced me to admit fault, and forced me to lower my head. Only said that I did not have to speak if I did not wish to. I held the box more tightly. Thank you, Your Highness. After he left, Lu Jingheng remained where he was, his face shifting between pale and dark. I ignored him and returned to my courtyard. When I opened the medical classic, a bitter almond scent rose from the pages. The instant it entered my nose, my entire body went rigid. I remembered that smell. During my mother's illness, an incense said to calm the spirit had burned beside her bed. For years, it carried the same faint, bitter almond scent. I slowly closed the book and looked into the deepening night beyond the window. The Qingluan Jade Pendant, the Regent's old poisoning, and my mother's death. These threads had been intertwined from the very beginning. I was not surprised when Lu Jingheng privately stopped me after the banquet. Guests were gradually leaving the rear garden. Qingdai supported me along the corridor. When we reached the plum grove, Lu Jingheng emerged from behind an artificial hill. Qingdai immediately stepped in front of me. Young Lord Lu, this is the women's inner courtyard. He did not even look at her. Chenchengning, I have something to say to you. I raised one hand and let King Dai step back half a pace. Please speak. He frowned, apparently dissatisfied by my indifference. I can overlook what happened today. I stared at him, almost believing I had heard incorrectly. He continued, your temperament has changed, but you remain the legitimate daughter of a marquis, and the Shin family's maternal granddaughter. If you are willing to correct your behavior, I can persuade my mother to continue the engagement between our families. In my previous life, those words might have moved me to tears. After the Liu family cancelled our engagement, I became a laughingstock in the capital. Father said that if I could not even keep the Earl of Ningyuan's heir, I deserved to be unwanted. Now I found the man before me. Absurd. Young Lord Liu wishes to marry me? His expression eased, believing I had been shaken. Yes. But you contradicted your elders in public today and damaged your reputation. If you wish to enter the Liu household, you will need to increase your dowry considerably to silence the clan. King Dai's face went white with anger. I smiled. By how much? Lu Jinggeng thought he had succeeded and lowered his voice. Everyone knows. Your mother's dowry was generous. The Earl of Ningyuan's household will not mistreat you, but you must also be sensible. Bring enough dowry, and I can overlook the dispute between you and Rujia. And what of Rujia? I asked. He stiffened. What? You defended her today because you pitied her. How can you turn around and marry me? Displeasure crossed his face. Why be jealous? Rujia is weak and I merely sympathize with her. The position of principal wife is naturally more suitable for you. Suitable not affections, not respect suitable. Because I was the legitimate daughter, had the Shen family behind me, and possessed a rich dowry. I nodded slowly. Your reasoning is sound. But I cannot privately agree to a marriage. Why not invite several elders to witness this conversation so that no one can dispute it later? His brow twitched. What do you mean? I did not answer. I looked beyond the plum grove. Since the ladies have heard us, why not come out and have some tea? Several noblewomen and young ladies, who had not yet left the residence, emerged awkwardly. They had come to admire the plum blossoms, and had not expected to overhear such a conversation. Lu Jingjing's face turned deathly pale. I said pleasantly, Young Lord Liu just said that he is willing to overlook my damaged reputation and continue the marriage as long as I increase my dowry. These ladies can all serve as witnesses. I am deeply grateful. One woman could not help saying, Young Lord Liu. A young lady rolled her eyes. Some moment ago, he accused eldest young lady Chen of being aggressive. Now he is calculating her dowry. Lu Jingheng said urgently, That is not what I meant. I looked at him. Then what did you mean? He could not answer. I stepped closer and lowered my voice, so only he could hear. Lu Jingheng, if you want to live off the Shin family, first see whether you have the life to do it. He stared at me. I stepped back and restored a proper smile. Safe travels, young Lord Liu. He left almost in disgrace. Qingdai's shoulders shook as she suppressed her laughter. When I turned, I caught sight of the corner of a black robe beyond the bamboo shadows. Xiao Chengyuan had seen everything again. He walked out with a calm expression. Eldest young lady Chen is busy today, I curtsied. I hope your highness will excuse the spectacle. No, he said. It was entertaining. I did not understand at first. What was? The play. I finally laughed softly. It was the first time since my rebirth that I truly wanted to laugh. After watching me for a moment, he asked, Did you examine the medical text? I nodded. What did you discover? I did not answer immediately. I could not explain memories from a previous life, but I could speak of the bitter almond scent. There is a bitter almond fragrance in its pages. Your Highness, since the old poisoning, does your chest become cold and your fingertips numb whenever it rains? His eyes sharpened. The black-clad guard behind him, Shuning, raised his head instantly and fixed me with a blade-like stare. I met Xiao Chengyuan's gaze calmly. This is not an ordinary cold poison. If I am correct, after your highness was poisoned as a child, someone used calming incense to suppress the symptoms. Bitter almonds, white typhonium root, and aconite were mixed into the incense. Over time, the conflict among them drove the poison into the organs. Xuanying asked coldly, How does eldest young lady Chen know this? Xiao Qingyuan raised a hand to stop him. I lowered my eyes. My mother used a similar incense during her illness. Xiao Qingyuan's expression darkened completely. What were her symptoms? I remembered carefully. At first she feared the cold, later she coughed blood. At the end she became confused. The household physicians said she had long suffered from a chronic illness, but now I believe otherwise. Xiao Chengyuan did not ask why I had only now begun to suspect it. I will have Renji Hall investigated, he said. I looked up. Your Highness knows Renji Hall? It was part of your mother's dowry. I was startled by how quickly he had investigated. Seeing my caution, he did not step closer. He merely took a small silver token from his sleeve. If there is an urgent matter, take this to Tingshu Tower in the western part of the city. I did not accept it immediately. A token from the regent's residence was not something one casually took. It is not a reward, he said. It is for our cooperation. Cooperation. That word steadied me more than any sweet promise could have. I accepted the token. Then I will send your highness something in return. After returning to my courtyard, I wrote a medicinal prescription overnight and had Qingdai deliver it to Tingzhu Tower. It was incomplete, but sufficient to temporarily suppress his poison. I did not reveal every card in my hand at once. Xiao Chengyuan was the most important ally in this life, but trust between allies still had to be confirmed step by step. The next morning, Qingdai returned with a small wooden box. It contained neither gold nor jewels, only a piece of paper in Xiao Chengyuan's handwriting. The prescription works. I will not ask what Miss Chen does not wish to say. I read it for a long time, folded it carefully and placed it inside my dressing case. That same day, Madame Liu sent over the general dowry ledger. The book was new. The ink was new. I read several pages and laughed. She truly believed that a freshly fabricated account book could fool me. On the third day, an invitation arrived from the palace. The Empress Dowager was holding a spring banquet and inviting the capital's noble young ladies to admire the flowers. Chen Rujia's name was also on the invitation. Qingdai frowned. Second young lady is still confined. How can she enter the palace? I studied the gold-painted peony on the invitation and smiled slowly. Someone wants her there. Qingdai did not understand. I put down the invitation and touched the King Luan Jade Pendant at my neck. They cannot wait any longer. Since Rujia no longer has the true pendant, they will make a counterfeit. At the palace banquet, she intends to steal more than my jade. She intends to steal the debt of gratitude owed to me. The night before entering the palace, I dreamed of the cold pool. Snow fell heavily in the dream. Plum branches behind Fahua Temple bowed beneath its weight. I was 9 years old and had accompanied my mother to offer incense. Partway along the path, I heard the ice break. A boy had fallen into the freezing pool. His attendants were in chaos. I did not know where I found the courage, but I grabbed a vine hanging over the bank and crawled toward him. His face was bluish-white, his fingers dug into the ice and a bleeding wound crossed his wrist. Red spread through the water. I shoved the jade pendant into his palm and shouted, "Hold this, do not fall asleep." Then I fell in as well. When I awakened, I lay in my mother's arms. The web between my left thumb and forefinger throbbed, and mother cried as she bandaged it, scolding me for being too daring. I ran a high fever for 3 days afterward, and many details became hazy. In my previous life, when Chen Rujia used the pendant and claimed to be Xiao Chengyuan's rescuer, I had remembered none of this, only as she boasted before my death had the memories slowly risen, like writing reappearing on paper soaked in water. I awoke before dawn. Hearing movement, Qingdai came in with a robe thrown around her shoulders. "My lady, did you have another nightmare?" I sat up and stared at the faint scar on my left hand. After so many years it was almost invisible. But if Xiao Chengyuan truly was the boy from the pool, he would remember it. Qingdai put away the scar-removing ointment. She blinked. "Did you not always dislike the scar?" "I no longer dislike it. It was the mark of the life stolen from me, and the evidence with which I would reclaim it." On the day of the palace banquet, Madame Liu specially sent me a pale blue-green gown, saying I must not lose decorum at court. I ran my fingers over the hidden pattern embroidered around the sleeves. It was beautiful, but fine silver threads had been woven into the cuffs. If tea were spilled on them during the banquet, the silver would react and leave dark stains that from a distance resembled filth. Madame Liu had loved such petty tricks in my previous life, using them to humiliate me in public. I told Qingdai to accept the dress, then changed into a moon-white gown my mother had left behind. Before departure, Chen Rujia emerged from Madame Liu's courtyard. Her face remained slightly pale, but her hair was arranged exquisitely. A green jade pendant hung at her waist. Qingdai noticed it immediately and whispered angrily, "She even dared copy your pendant." I smiled at the counterfeit. "It is a good imitation, but false is false." After our carriage entered the palace, we were led to the imperial garden. Noblewomen and young ladies filled the spring banquet. There were flowers, bright fabrics, and cheerful laughter, yet the gathering felt more like an elegant net than any inner courtyard of the marquise's residence. Chen Rojia was quickly surrounded by several young ladies. One noticed the pendant at her waist. Second young lady Chen, "That jade is unusual." Chen Rojia lowered her eyes. "It is merely an old keepsake." "An old keepsake?" The speaker was County Princess Rong'an. Her father served as chief secretary in the second prince's residence. She often carried messages and opinions through the circle of noble young women on behalf of the Empress Dowager and the second prince. In my previous life, after my reputation was ruined, she had publicly mocked me. If a legitimate daughter conducts herself this badly, she is less sensible than an illegitimate one. Seeing her again made me wary. County Princess Rong'an smiled. I heard that the Regent has searched for years for a King Luan Jade Pendant, saying it was the token left by the person who saved him long ago. Kenrujia lowered her eyes, her ears turning red. Your ladyship should not tease me. She did not admit it, but her manner invited more speculation than an admission would have. The gazes of the surrounding young ladies changed. County Princess Rong'an looked at me, her smile deepening. Why does eldest young Lady Chen look displeased? Is there some story behind this pendant? I did not answer immediately. I had noticed that the maid behind her had a tiny black lotus pattern embroidered on her cuff. In my previous life, when my maternal family was raided over the military grain case, I had seen a similar design on the sleeves of the soldiers conducting the search. In that instant, I understood. Today's palace banquet was not merely Chenrujia's attempt to steal credit for the rescue. The second prince's faction was pushing her forward. They wanted to place her inside the regent's residence and bind Xiao Chengyuan with a supposed debt to his rescuer. The Empress Dowager soon arrived. After everyone saluted, she smiled and told us to rise. Her gaze paused on the pendant at Chenrujia's waist. That jade looks familiar. Chenrujia knelt, her voice trembling. I am humbled, Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager chuckled. Why be frightened? I have heard that the regent has long searched for the person who saved him beside the cold pool. Could it be you, Chen? Rojia glanced at me before lowering her head again. I did visit Fahua Temple with my mother when I was young, but so much time has passed that I no longer remember many things clearly. Coldness gathered in my eyes. She claimed not to remember, but did not deny it. The Empress Dowager seemed pleased. She turned toward Xiao Chengyuan as he entered the garden. Regent, look at this pendant. Is it the one you have sought? Every gaze fell on him. He wore a black court robe. His features were cool and restrained. As he approached, I caught a faint medicinal fragrance. My prescription truly had eased his poison for the time being. His gaze swept across the pendant at Chenrojia's waist and paused on me for the briefest instant before moving away. Chenrojia knelt with her fingers gripping her skirt. The Empress Dowager smiled more broadly. If second young Lady Chen is truly your benefactor, it is a heaven-sent connection. She is gentle and virtuous. Taking her into the regent's residence as a secondary consort would not dishonor her. So that was the Empress Dowager's plan. I was about to speak when Xiao Chengyuan spoke first. Your Majesty is joking. Her smile stiffened. Oh? This jade is counterfeit. Chenrujia's face instantly turned deathly pale. Displeasure flashed in the Empress Dowager's eyes. How do you know? The King Luan Jade Pendant I seek has grains of gold embedded in the bird's eye and an old crack at the tip. Second young Lady Chen's pendant is too new. The gathering erupted in whispers. Chenrujia said urgently, Your Highness, this jade is genuine. It has simply been preserved carefully. I finally spoke. Rujia's words are not entirely unreasonable. Jade can be artificially aged or polished to look new. The object alone may not be enough to distinguish truth from falsehood. She stared at me, evidently not expecting me to appear to help her. I walked forward and saluted the Empress Dowager. Your Majesty, since this concerns the rescue at the cold pool, why not ask about details known only to the people involved? The Empress Dowager narrowed her eyes. What do you wish to ask? I looked at Chenrujia. Younger sister, do you remember where the boy was injured? Her lips lost their color. How could she know in my previous life, only after she entered Xiao Chengyuan's favor, were the details slowly supplied to her by people around him? This time, everything had happened earlier. She had never had a chance to learn them. She stammered. It was many years ago. I only remember that he fell into the water, I continued. Then do you remember where you yourself were injured while saving him? Her eyes darted wildly. The Empress Dowager's expression darkened. I raised my left hand and slowly revealed the faint scar at the web of my thumb. There were sharp fragments beside the cold pool. When I pulled him toward the bank, one of them cut my left hand. Mother feared it would scar and searched for many medicines. If His Highness remembers that day, he should know. Xiao Chengyuan's gaze settled on my hand. For a moment, powerful emotion surged in his eyes before being swiftly restrained. He stepped beside me and lifted my wrist without touching my skin, allowing everyone to see the scar. I remember. The two words fell like thunder. Chenrujia collapsed to the ground. I looked at her. Younger sister, where did the imitation pendant at your waist come from? She sobbed. I do not know. Mother gave it to me. Madame Lu was not present, so Chenrujia pushed the blame onto her without hesitation. County Princess Rong'an suddenly said, Eldest young lady Chen, perhaps second young lady, simply remembered incorrectly. Why must you press her so relentlessly? I looked at her. Your ladyship makes it sound simple. If I had not asked clearly today, tomorrow my sister would have entered the regent's residence with counterfeit jade and falsely claimed to be His Highness's rescuer. Would that also be merely remembering incorrectly? Her expression tightened. Xiao Chengyuan glanced at her. County Princess Rong seems unusually anxious on second young lady Chen's behalf. Her face changed completely. The Empress Dowager had also heard the implication and her expression became severe. Xiao Chengyuan lowered my wrist and said evenly, I recognize the person, not the jade. The words were quiet, yet every young woman in the garden changed expression. I lowered my gaze as an ache rose in my heart. In my previous life, Chen Rujia said, he recognized only the pendant. She had been wrong. Perhaps I had been wrong from the beginning as well. I believed that losing the pendant meant losing everything, but what truly belonged to me would eventually return so long as I stopped yielding. The Empress Dowager ordered the counterfeit pendant confiscated, and Chen Rujia investigated. As palace attendants led her away, she stared at me with hatred. I knew she hated me, but this was only the beginning. Before the palace banquet ended, the young emperor suddenly spoke. Imperial uncle, since you have found the person who saved you, an eldest young lady Chen is the legitimate daughter of a marquis and descended from loyal ministers, why not grant the marriage? The garden fell silent. I raised my head and looked at Xiao Chengyuan. He was also looking at me. I could not read his expression, but I heard him ask quietly, Chen Chengning, are you willing? Everyone waited for my answer. The Empress Dowager's expression was dark. The young ladies looked complicated. Chen Rojia, supported by palace servants, was nearly grinding her teeth to pieces. I suddenly remembered the long nights in the neglected courtyard of my previous life. At that time I believed no one would ever again ask whether I was willing. I knelt. My voice was clear. I am willing, Your Majesty. When the imperial marriage decree arrived at the Marquis of Yongning's residence, my father personally led the entire household to kneel in the main hall. As the eunuch finished reading the decree, every face in the hall showed a different emotion. Old Madam was startled, then overjoyed. Madame Liu was white as paper but forced herself to smile. Chen Rujia knelt behind her, her nails nearly digging into her palms. Her forehead was lowered, so I could not see her eyes, but I could feel the hatred she could no longer suppress. After the proclamation, father hurried forward with silver for the eunuch. That His Highness values Chengning is a blessing for this household. The word blessing sounded bitterly ironic. When my reputation was ruined in my previous life, he called me the disgrace of the household. Now that I had been granted marriage to the regent, he called me its blessing. In his eyes, the affection between father and daughter depended entirely on what I could bring him. After the eunuch left, father looked at me with unusual kindness. Chengning, you are now the future princess consort. You must be even more cautious in your words and action. Do not disgrace this family. I lowered my eyes. I accept father's instruction. Madame Liu came forward and warmly grasped my hand. Good child, you have received such fortune. Mother is truly happy for you. Do not worry about your dowry. I will prepare it so that you marry in proper splendor. If I had not seen how she swallowed my mother's dowry, I might have mistaken her for a loving stepmother. I withdrew my hand. Since mother mentions the dowry, the timing is perfect. Her smile froze. I looked at father and the old madam. My mother's dowry has been managed by mother for years. Now that the marriage decree has been issued, the wedding cannot be far away. I ask father and grandmother to allow me to inventory it and take control beginning today. The smile disappeared from father's face. Madame Liu immediately said, Changning, a dowry is complicated. You are young. How can you manage it? If I cannot manage it, I replied gently, I can ask my maternal family to send accountants. Madame Liu fell silent. The old madam frowned. Why trouble the Duke of Zhengguo's household? It is not as though this family refuses to return it. I raised my head. Grandmother is right. If the accounts here are clear, there will naturally be no need to involve my maternal family. The main hall fell quiet. Father's expression was displeased, but with the imperial decree and the regent's residence behind me, he did not dare reject me openly. At that moment, the gatekeeper announced, someone has arrived from the regent's residence. The visitor was Matron Qin, a senior stewardess from the regent's household. A woman of about 50, simply dressed but composed and authoritative. After saluting the old madam and father, she bowed to me. His Highness heard that eldest young lady Qin intends to inventory her dowry and asked me to bring several accountants to assist. His Highness said the late Madame Shen's dowry was extensive, and eldest young lady must not be exhausted. The words sounded considerate, but landed across Madame Lu's face like a slap. Do not exhaust me, and do not allow anyone to deceive me. A muscle at Madame Lu's temple jumped. Father forced a smile. His Highness is thoughtful, Matron Qin said calmly. His Highness also said that a woman's dowry is her private property. Under the laws of Great Yao, no one may dispose of it without permission. If the accounts contain irregularities, the Regent's chief secretary may report the matter to the capital prefecture on her behalf. Father's smile became rigid. I lowered my head to hide the smile at my lips. Xiao Chengyuan was even more skilled at handing me a blade than I had imagined. The inventory began that afternoon. Madame Liu's general ledger formed a thick stack, but when compared with the half of my mother's original account book, it was full of holes. One of the 3 Jiangnan estates was missing. 5 of the 12 Jinling storefronts had vanished. 1.5 cases of Eastern pearls were gone. Of the 80,000 taels in cash, only 13,000 remained. Most important, Renji Hall had disappeared. I pointed at the name in the old account book. Where is this apothecary? Matron Zhao's face changed. Madame Liu answered with difficulty. Renji Hall performed poorly and was sold years ago. The proceeds were used for your mother's medicine. I looked at Matron Qin. She immediately asked, where is the deed of transfer? Where are the medical expense records? Where is the shop manager who handled the sale? The 3 questions left Madame Su ashen-faced. Father said impatiently, it was only an apothecary. Why make so much of it? I slowly raised my head. He frowned. I stood. My voice was quiet but clear. It was part of my mother's dowry. It was something she left to me. Today it is only an apothecary. Tomorrow it is only an estate. The day after that, perhaps even my mother's memorial tablet can be dismissed as only a piece of wood. Father slammed the table. Insolent. Matron Qin stepped half a pace forward and stood between us. She said nothing, but Father's anger stopped abruptly. I looked at him and realized that the last remnant of pain in my heart had finally dulled. Once a person had been wounded beyond endurance in one life, the same knife falling again in the next could be met with much greater calm. Seeing the deadlock, Madame Liu hurried to say, Chongning, mother was negligent. I will have people search for Renji Hall's deed again. No need. An old but powerful voice came from outside. I turned and saw my maternal grandfather, the Duke of Zhengguo, striding into the hall. His hair was graying, but his back remained as straight as a pine. Behind him came several accountants from the Duke of Zhengguo's household, and my maternal uncle, Shenlin. My eyes burned. In my previous life, grandfather had not known how much I suffered in the Marquise's residence, not even by the time I died. Before this inventory, I had written the first plea for help I had ever written with my own hands. Grandfather stopped before me and looked at me for a long time. He raised a hand as though to stroke my hair, but in the end only pressed my shoulder lightly. Chengning grandfather came too late. My nose stung, but I did not cry. Not late. Truly, not late. This time everything could still be changed. The old duke turned toward father, his expression terrifyingly cold. Marquis Chen, when my daughter married into your household, the dowry list was prepared in 3 copies. The Shen family retained 1. Today I would like to see who dares call anything only an apothecary. Father's face darkened. Madame Liu finally panicked with the Shen family's original dowry list, the regent's accountants, and Matron Qin supervising. It was impossible for Madame Liu to conceal anything. The investigation continued deep into the night. The amount missing was shocking. Madame Liu knelt before the old madam and wept. Mother, this household has struggled for years. I had no choice. I looked at her coldly. You had no choice but to use my mother's dowry to buy jewelry for Chen Rojia? No choice but to use the proceeds from my mother's shops to cover the Liu family's deficits? No choice but to sell Renji Hall and erase clues to my mother's death? The old duke asked sharply. Members of the Liu family have worked in the Ministry of Revenue's grain transport office for years and move enormous sums. Why would they need my daughter's dowry to cover their shortages? Madame Liu's expression changed at once. My thoughts stirred the Liu family and the grain transport office. In my previous life, my maternal family fell because of the military grain case. Madame Liu's family had ties to grain transport. What appeared to be an inner household struggle had never been only an inner household struggle. Grandfather clearly reached the same conclusion, and his expression became even darker. That night, I escorted him to the gate. Before leaving, he asked suddenly. I was silent for a moment. Grandfather, I dreamed of mother. His eyes reddened instantly. I continued softly. She said she died unjustly. His hand tightened around his cane. The night wind shook the lanterns outside the marquis's gate. Standing inside, I watched my grandfather depart and touched the Qingluan jade pendant at my neck. The jade was cool, as though my mother had finally answered me gently from the darkness. After the imperial marriage decree, the direction of gossip in the capital changed overnight. Young ladies who once avoided me now sent invitations. Some praised my good fortune. Some said I had been born lucky. Others whispered that I had used the life-saving debt to pressure the regent into marrying me. When the rumors reached me, Qingdai nearly smashed a teacup. My latest second young lady must have spread this. I kept turning the pages of an account book. It was not her alone. Qingdai paused. I tapped the page with one finger. At the palace banquet, County Princess Rangan spoke for her. The moment the marriage was granted, the rumor spread through the young ladies' circle. Chen Rujia is confined. She cannot act so quickly by herself. The second prince's residence again? Qingdai asked quietly. I nodded. They had failed to place Chen Rujia in the regent's residence, so they wanted to use gossip to make me stumble. Nothing damaged a woman's reputation faster than accusations of shamelessly clinging to a man and forcing a marriage. If I hurried to defend myself, I would seem guilty. If I remained silent, the lie would harden into truth. Thus, when County Princess Rangan invited me to a tea gathering, I accepted. The gathering was held at the Marquis of Amping's residence. Many young ladies were already seated when I arrived. Chen Rujia was also present. Her face was pale and her clothes plain, as though she had forced herself out of a sickbed, yet a newly embroidered sachet hung at her waist, delicate enough to reinforce her fragile appearance. County Princess Rangan greeted me with a smile. The future princess consort is truly difficult to invite, I smiled. Your ladyship is teasing me. After everyone sat, the palace banquet was soon mentioned, one young woman said meaningfully. Eldest young lady Chen and the regent seem remarkably destined for each other. He recognized the rescuer from so many years ago, and an imperial marriage decree followed immediately. Another added, a life-saving debt is certainly great, but marriage should still be based on mutual affection rather than obligation. The wording was tactful, but every word pierced toward me. Qingdai's expression hardened behind my chair. I raised my tea and took a small sip. You are correct. Marriage should never be forced, nor should anyone falsely claim credit for saving another person's life. Chen Rujia's fingers twitched. County Princess Ran's smile did not change. Why must eldest young lady Chen continue clinging to that matter? Second young lady, merely remembered incorrectly. I put down my cup. Your words sound familiar. At the palace banquet, your ladyship also insisted that my sister merely remembered incorrectly. I have wondered ever since, why were you so certain? The room grew quiet. Her expression shifted. What do you mean? I did not answer. I clapped once. Qingdai went out and soon returned with a middle-aged craftsman in gray clothing. The moment Chen Rujia saw him, her face went white. The man knelt. My name is Chengxi. I am an artisan at a jade workshop. Half a month ago, someone brought a drawing of a Qingluan pendant and ordered me to copy it. The person who supplied the drawing was second young lady Chen's wet nurse. A steward from County Princess Rangan's household was also present. The hall erupted. County Princess Rangan shot to her feet. Nonsense! I looked at hers. Is the steward from your household present today? Her expression darkened. I produced a receipt. This is the workshop's payment record. It bears your steward's private seal. If your ladyship refuses to recognize it, we may ask the capital prefecture to verify the seal. Her composure finally broke. Chen Rujia fell to her knees and cried, Elder sister, I truly did not know. My wet nurse acted on her own. I only wanted something to remember the past by. I watched her cry. Her tears had drowned me in my previous life. Now they only sounded noisy. You wanted a keepsake, so you copied my pendant. You wanted a memory, so you stole the credit for saving His Highness. You wanted to enter the regent's residence, so you borrowed my life. My voice was quiet, but every woman in the hall heard it. Again and again, you say you did not mean to do these things. How can there be so many convenient accidents in this world? Her crying stopped. I turned to the gathering. I will say this only once. My marriage to the regent was granted by His Majesty, and His Highness personally asked whether I was willing. If anyone continues to say that I forced the marriage, that person is not merely discussing Qingchengning. She is questioning an imperial decree and the word of the regent's residence. The hall became deathly silent. No one dared accept that charge. County Princess Rangan sat down with clenched teeth, resentment almost impossible to hide. I knew she would not stop. But after today, the capital's young ladies would at least hesitate before using the phrase forced marriage to shame me. As I left, Chen Rujia followed me into the corridor. She stood beneath the eaves, her voice shaking. Elder sister, must you drive me to death? I stopped. Tears rolled down her face. You already have His Highness, your maternal family, and your dowry. Why will you not let me go? I turned toward her. Chenrujia, when you stole my pendant in my previous life, did you let me go? She froze. When you arranged for me to fall into the water, ruined my reputation, stole my engagement, caused King Dai's death, and imprisoned me in a neglected courtyard. Did you let me go? The color slowly drained from her face. I do not know what you are talking about. I stepped closer and spoke very softly. You will. I walked away. Behind me, Chenrujia stood gripping a pillar, as though her soul had been pulled from her body. After that day, I became even more certain. She did not remember the previous life, but she was afraid. Fear made people impatient. Impatience made them make mistakes. The former manager of Renji Hall was found in a narrow lane in the southern part of the city. His surname was Zhou. He was almost 60 and lame in one leg, surviving by copying prescriptions for others. When he saw me, his first reaction was not to bow but to turn and run. Swenning dropped from the wall and caught his shoulder. Manager Zhou went pale. Spare me, honored ones. I know nothing. I stood at the entrance of the lane and looked at his trembling back. Manager Zhou, I am Shen Mingtong's daughter. He became completely still. After a long moment he turned around, tears filled his clouded eyes. Eldest young lady, you have grown so much. We entered his ruined house. It held only a wooden bed, a small table and several bundles of medicinal herbs in the corner. The air smelled bitter, but not of that familiar almond incense. After sitting, I asked directly, was my mother poisoned? The tea bowl fell from his hands and shattered. He dropped to his knees, weeping. I failed, Madam Shen, I failed you. Qingdai's eyes reddened instantly. You knew I did not rush to accuse him, Zem. Tell me, Manager Zhou trembled as he spoke. When Madame became ill, she often burned calming incense. I discovered something wrong with the formula. A minute quantity of aconite had been added. 1 or 2 exposures would not kill a person, but over time it damaged the lungs and organs, causing extreme sensitivity to cold and coughing of blood. I warned Madame, but within days, Madame Liu sent people to sell Renji Hall and I was driven out of the capital. Madame Liu had not yet become the principal wife, I said coldly. What authority did she have to sell my mother's dowry shop? Manager Zhou did not dare look at me. Swenning said suddenly. Without the Marquise's seal, even the household's current mistress would have no authority to dispose of the late principal wife's dowry. The words pierced my heart. I should have known. No matter how vicious Madame Liu was, she had only been a woman in the inner household. For her to swallow dowry, sell a shop, and silence its manager, father must have permitted it. I closed my eyes when I opened them again. No tears remained. Where is the evidence? Manager Zhou crawled to the bed and removed an oil paper bundle from beneath the boards. It contained a fragment of the formula, a piece of incense, and half of a transfer deed stamped with an official seal. I also kept half of the incense mixing record. The person who delivered the incense into the residence was Chen Zhong, a longtime servant at the Marquis's side. The person who blended it was an old woman surnamed Fang, whom the Liu family brought from the Ministry of Revenue's Grain Transport Office. The Grain Transport Office again. I took the yellowed formula. Its edges were brittle. Bitter almond, white typhonium root and aconite matched almost exactly a page in the medical classic concerning Xiao Qingwan's old poison. My fingers slowly clenched. Mother's death and Xiao Qingwan's poisoning had indeed come from the same source. The carriage was silent on the way back save for the wheels. Qingdai's eyes were swollen from crying, but she did not dare make a sound. I stared at the formula, seeing only mother on her sickbed. In my previous life, I had always blamed my poor fate. I blamed mother for dying too early and the household for leaving me unprotected. Now I understood. It was not that no one had protected me. The person who protected me had been murdered first. The carriage stopped outside Tingshou Tower. Dark clouds hung low over the capital, like an old debt arriving late. I took the silver token upstairs. Xiao Chengyan was waiting. An untouched cup of tea sat before him, and his face remained pale from illness. I placed the formula on the table. Your Highness, the poison that harmed you and the poison that killed my mother may have come from the same source. After reading it, his expression became icy. Aconite-laced incense, he said. You know it? After the old military grain case on the northern frontier, several of the late emperor's former officials died one after another with similar symptoms. He looked at me. Your mother, Shen Mingtong, was among the first people to discover irregularities in the grain accounts. My breathing tightened. Why was my mother involved? He no longer concealed the answer. The Duke of Zhengguo's household supervised northern military supplies for years. Before she married, your mother helped the Shen family reconcile a set of grain ledgers. She discovered that old grain was being substituted for new grain and soldiers' provisions were being embezzled. That batch of grain later caused the deaths of 3,000 soldiers on the northern frontier. 3,000 soldiers, my grip on the cup turned my knuckles white. So she was silenced? Yes, Xiao Chengyuan said softly. I was poisoned while investigating the same matter. When you saved me at the cold pool, I was fleeing assassins. Everything became clear. The cold pool had been more than the place where I saved his life. It was the crossing point of Mother's investigation, the Regent's poisoning, and the old military grain case. Who was behind it? After a pause he answered, the second prince's faction and people belonging to the Empress Dowager. I remembered the Empress Dowager's eagerness to place Chen Rojia in the regent's residence and felt cold. She had not merely wanted to restrain Changjuan. She feared that the old case would be reopened. What about the Chen family? He was silent for a breath. Your father probably knew part of the truth. He may not have participated in the grain case, but he helped Madame Liu conceal your mother's poisoning. That was crueler than simply declaring father a criminal. Perhaps he had not been the principal culprit, but he had known and remained silent. I laughed once without humor. Thunder sounded outside. Xiao Chengyuan's fingers tightened suddenly. I raised my head and saw his face grow even paler, cold sweat forming at his temple. Xuanying said urgently, Your Highness's poison has flared up again. I rose at once and took out silver needles. Warm wine, light another lamp. Xuanying hesitated and looked at Xiao Chengyuan. He said quietly, Do as she says. I rolled up his sleeve. His wrist was cold as ice when my fingers touched it, but he did not withdraw. I inserted needles into the points along his wrist and instructed King Dai to prepare medicine according to my prescription. The rain intensified. Wind made the lamps flicker. Xiao Chengyuan leaned against the couch, breathing shallowly. If it hurts, your highness need not endure silently, I said. He looked at me. His lips were pale, yet he still asked, Did mission comfort people this way before? My hand paused. You are this ill and still have the energy to joke? It is not a joke, he said softly. I only wish to hear you speak a little more. My heart missed a beat. After the last needle was placed, warmth slowly returned to his fingers. I released a breath. He saw the perspiration on my brow and lifted a hand as though to wipe it away, but stopped halfway. I looked at his suspended hand. After a moment, I took out my own handkerchief and wiped my brow. A faint smile appeared in his eyes. What are you smiling at? I asked. You did not move away. I froze. The rain outside softened. I lowered my head. Neither did you force me. He had never forced me to explain memories that could not be explained. He had never forced me to be weak, to forgive, or to become the kind of good woman praised by the world. Xiao Chengyuan looked at me. Chen Changning, if you intend to investigate this to the end, I will accompany you. My hand tightened around the silver needles. Even if it leads to the Marquis's residence, the Liu family, the second prince? Even the Empress Dowager, he replied. No matter who it is. At that moment, I finally understood. This was no longer a debt of gratitude, nor merely cooperation. It meant standing shoulder to shoulder. 3 days later, the ancestral hall of the Marquis of Yangning's household was opened. The Chen clan elders gathered in full. Father sat in the principal seat with a dark expression. Madame Liu knelt to one side, her hair slightly disordered and her eyes swollen. Chen Rujia stood behind her, looking haggard but still watching me with hatred. When Qingdai and I entered, grandfather and Uncle Shenlin had already arrived. Xiao Chengyuan sat to one side. His rank made it improper for him to interfere openly in the Chen household's private affairs. But merely by sitting there, he made every clan elder hesitate to show favoritism. I offered incense before the ancestral tablets. As smoke rose, I looked at the inscription ancestors of the Chen clan and found them absurd. These tablets were supposed to protect the Chen bloodline. When my mother, Shen Mingtang, died unjustly in this household, had any of them heard her grievance? I turned and placed the fragment of Renji Hall's formula, the transfer deed bearing father's seal, Zhou Changgai's written testimony, the incense records, and the accounts showing the missing dowry on the table. Today, before the ancestral hall, I ask only 3 questions. My voice carried through the hall. First, while still only a concubine, by what authority did Madame Liu sell my birth mother's dowry? Apothecary? Madame Liu cried. I did not. Servants acted on their own. I looked at father. Second, why does the transfer deed bear father's seal? He slammed the table. Are you interrogating your father? I knelt but did not lower my head. I would not dare interrogate you, father. I ask only for justice. The ancestral hall fell silent. I continued. Third, the calming incense used during my mother's illness contained aconite. After Manager Zhou discovered it, he was driven out of the capital. Chenzhong, father's longtime servant, delivered the incense. Matron Fang, brought by the Liu family from the grain transport office, blended it. Did father know? His face shifted between dark and pale. Madame Liu wept harder. My lord, I did not harm elder sister. I only heard from a physician that the incense calmed the mind. Grandfather shouted, "Silence!" Years of battlefield authority filled his voice. Madame Liu trembled. Chenrujia dropped to her knees. Grandfather, mother would never harm anyone. Elder sister has gained the regent's residence, and now wants to force us mother and daughter to death. I looked at her. Chenrujia, you have no right to call him grandfather. Her face turned white. I stepped in front of her. When my mother was poisoned, your mother had already entered this household. You grew up living off my mother's dowry, wore jewelry bought with the proceeds from her shops, and stole the pendant she left me. Now, you still wish to call my grandfather yours, and ask him to excuse your mother. Her crying stopped. I turned to father. I ask only one thing. Did you know there was something wrong with the incense? His hand shook. After a long silence, he avoided my gaze. Your mother was already weak. So many years have passed. Why dig into the matter again? The answer was clearer than a confession. The stone that had pressed on my chest for 2 lifetimes finally fell away. It hurt. Yet I also felt lighter. Father had known. He suddenly snapped. So what if I knew your mother was already dead? Was I to destroy the entire Marquis' household for a dead woman? Madame Liu was pregnant then. The household could not endure another scandal. Everyone in the ancestral hall heard him. Madame Liu collapsed. Chenrujia lost all color. Grandfather swayed with fury, and Uncle Xinlin hurried to support him. Xiao Chengyuan finally spoke. Marquis Chen, I will have every word you just said conveyed to His Majesty exactly. Father stared at him. Your Highness, this is my family matter. Xiao Chengyuan's voice was cold. Poisoning a principal wife, embezzling her dowry, and concealing a death are not family matters. I knelt straight before father. Father says my mother is dead, and that the Marquis' household should not be destroyed for her. Then I will also make my position clear today. I took out a document. My mother Xin Mingtong's dowry will be sealed, restored in full to my name, and jointly witnessed by the Duke of Jingguo's household and the regent's residence. Before my wedding, I will reside at the Duke of Jingguo's residence to await marriage. Father may no longer use the Chen household's authority to dispose of my marriage, dowry, or personal servants. A clan elder frowned. For an unmarried daughter to leave her father's household and wait for marriage elsewhere violates custom. Matron Qin entered carrying another document. By His Majesty's oral order, the late Madame Shen's case is connected to the military grain investigation. Eldest young Lady Chen is an essential witness. Before the wedding, the Duke of Jingguo's household will protect her person and her dowry, while the regent's chief secretary will jointly verify the accounts. This arrangement serves an official investigation and does not violate clan law. The clan elders fell silent. It was steadier and more ruthless than an emotional declaration that I would sever ties with the Chen family. I did not shout that I was ending the relationship between father and daughter. I simply removed father's actual control over me. He staggered. You prepared all of this in advance. I looked at him. Father taught me. He froze. In this residence, anyone who fails to prepare will be devoured until nothing remains. His face turned gray. Madame Liu continued crying her innocence as she was taken away. Chenrojia rushed toward her but was blocked by servant women. I left the ancestral hall. Sunlight outside was painfully bright. Qingdai supported me. My lady, your hands are so cold. I looked down and realized my fingertips were icy. Even necessary cruelty hurt when spoken aloud. Even a bond that deserved to be severed bled when cut. I was not stone. I had once hoped father would turn back if only for a moment. He never did. As I descended the steps, Xiao Qingyuan followed. He did not ask whether I regretted it, nor did he offer empty consolation. He merely handed a cloak to Qingdai. The wind is strong. Qingdai draped it around my shoulders, and warmth settled over me. Xiao Qingyuan looked at me. From now on, you no longer need to be anyone's discarded daughter. My eyes burned. Then what should I be? Yourself. After that day, Madame Liu was stripped of control over the household and confined in the family's Buddhist hall. The old madam placed Chenrujia under close watch. Father submitted a confession to the throne, and the Marquis of Yangning's residence closed its gates to visitors. I moved to the Duke of Jingguo's residence to await my wedding. I did not look back when I left, because I knew that the Chen Changning, who had swallowed every grievance inside the Marquis' residence, was completely dead at my maternal family's home. I slept more peacefully than at any time since my rebirth. My grandmother had passed away long ago. The residence held only grandfather, Uncle Xinlin, and several male cousins from military families. There were none of the hidden turns and traps of the Marquis of Yangning's household. Even the wind seemed freer. Grandfather gave me a courtyard with an old pomegranate tree. Mother had planted it herself before her marriage. Standing beneath it, I touched the rough bark and remembered what she had told me while teaching me to read accounts. When a woman has control of her own accounts, she can feel secure. I had finally reclaimed mine, but I knew the matter was not over. Madame Liu and Chen Rojia would not wait quietly for destruction. 7 days before the wedding, a fire broke out in Madame Liu's Buddhist hall. It was not large and burned only half a window. She was supposedly frightened, and the soft-hearted old madam allowed her to return to her own courtyard to recover. Qingdai said angrily, "My lady, she clearly set the fire herself." I looked at the pomegranate blossoms outside the window. "Let her out. If she remains confined, how will we catch her in the act?" That night, Xuning delivered a scrap of paper. It contained only one sentence. On the night before the wedding, lure her to the western villa and ruin her chastity. The mark at the bottom was one commonly used by a page serving Lu Jingning. Their scheme was not clever. They would claim that a new witness to mother's old case had appeared and lure me to the villa. They would then arrange for Lu Jingheng to appear. If people discovered an unmarried man and woman alone together, the future princess consort would become a scandal. If Xiao Chengyuan cancelled the marriage, Chen Rojia could again approach the regent's residence as the pitiful younger sister. If he did not, the regent's household would still be humiliated because of me. I had fallen into too many similar traps in my previous life. Now the scheme looked clumsy. That evening, a letter arrived imitating manager Zhou's handwriting. It claimed he had suddenly remembered another witness to mother's case, that the person was waiting at a western villa, and that he would leave the capital that very night. Qingdai gritted her teeth after reading it. "My lady, let me take people and seize them." I shook my head. What would that prove? They would claim they merely invited me to meet a witness. I want them to climb into the pit they dug themselves. After dark, I changed into a plain cloak and left with Qingdai. Of course, I did not go to the villa. A female secret guard wearing my cloak went into his place. Qingdai led people around to the rear entrance and blocked every route of escape. I sat on the second floor of Tingzue Tower, watching lights gradually appear in the western part of the city. Xiao Chengyuan sat opposite me and poured a cup of hot tea. Nervous? I watched steam rise from the tea and shook my head. Not nervous. Disgusted. He did not ask what had disgusted me. He understood that relatives' calculations, a former fiancé's greed, and sisters destroying one another became revolting after one had seen enough of them. "Does your highness think I am too ruthless?" I asked. "They intend to destroy your entire life. You are merely allowing them to suffer the consequence of their own actions. What if others say I lack virtue and kindness?" He put down his cup. "If virtue and kindness can be proved only by permitting others to humiliate you, then they are not worth having." I stared at him, then smiled. That does not sound like a strict traditionalist, nor do I live by those rigid conventions. At the second night watch, Sun Ying returned. "It is done." I stood by then. A crowd had gathered outside the western villa. The first people to burst inside were several idle sons of noble families, whom Lu Jingheng had invited to witness my supposed affair. But when they pushed open the door, they did not see me with an unfamiliar man. They saw Lu Jingheng and Chen Rojia with their clothing in disarray. Chen Rojia's scream almost lifted the roof. Lu Jingheng shouted that someone had framed them, but private letters he had written to her lay scattered beside the bed. On the table was drugged incense brought by her wet nurse. Even better, to ensure the scheme succeeded, Lu Jingheng had personally invited several young noblemen who were friendly with him to serve as witnesses. Those witnesses now testified against him. When I arrived, Qinrujia knelt on the floor and cried until her voice was hoarse. The moment she saw me, she lunged like a madwoman. "It was you, Chen Changning! You harmed me!" Qingdai stepped in front of me and pushed her away. I looked down at her. What a strange accusation. "You and young Lord Lu were alone together in the middle of the night. Love letters were scattered beside the bed, and the drugged incense was brought by your wet nurse. How did I harm you?" Her eyes were bloodshot. "You were supposed to come." The courtyard went silent. I asked gently, "How did you know I was supposed to come?" Her face turned white. Lu Jingheng panicked as well. "Ruja, be quiet." It was too late. Xuing brought forward the wet nurse and Lu Jingheng's page. Neither endured more than a brief interrogation before confessing everything from forging manager Zhou's letter, to preparing the drugged incense, to arranging people to discover the scene. Every step became clear. The noble women and young ladies in the crowd looked at Chen Rujia with disgust instead of sympathy. She covered her ears and screamed, "It was not me, it was my mother. She told me to do it." I watched her. She had finally dragged Madame Liu into the scandal. Good. That was exactly the statement I had been waiting for. Madame Liu was brought to the villa, her face pale as a ghost. Chen Rujia grabbed her skirts and cried, "Mother, save me." You said that if we destroyed her, I would still have a chance. Madame Liu slapped her across the face. Wretched girl. What nonsense are you saying? Chenrujia stared at her in shock. I watched mother and daughter turn on each other. In my previous life, they had watched me struggle in humiliation. At last it was their turn. Suining presented a wooden case. Inside were letters to exchange between Madame Liu and the Liu household, along with something more important, the original transfer deed for Renji Hall. The back bore Madame Liu's private seal and father's seal. Beneath it lay a letter from Madame Liu's elder brother, Su Cheng'an. It read, Madame Shen has already begun to suspect the grain accounts. The aconite-laced incense must be used as soon as possible. If she lives, neither the Liu family nor the second prince will be safe. My nails nearly pierced my palm as I read it. At last there was complete evidence of mother's murder. Xiao Chengyuan glanced at the letter and handed it to his chief secretary. Deliver this to the capital prefecture. Madame Liu finally collapsed. Your Highness, spare me. I was confused for only a moment. I walked to her. Were you confused for only a moment when you killed my mother? She looked at me sharply. When you swallowed my dowry, stole my pendant and helped your daughter harm and slander me. Were those all moments of confusion? Her lips trembled, but she could not answer. I bent close to her ear. Madame Liu, the debts from the neglected courtyard are only beginning to be collected today. She stared at me in terror, as though I had spoken something impossible. When servants from the Earl of Ningyuan's household dragged Lu Jing away, he still tried to plead with me. Chongning, I was deceived by her. The person I truly wanted to marry was you. I looked at him and felt even speaking to him would be unclean. Young Lord Lu, the prison is quiet. It will give you time to think. Chenrujia lay on the ground like a person without a soul. She valued her reputation more than anything, and had always dreamed of stepping on me to marry into a powerful household. Now her secret meetings were exposed, and the evidence that she had plotted against her elder half-sister, the household's legitimate daughter, was undeniable. She would never recover. Yet I did not feel the exhilaration I had imagined. Taking only part of my revenge felt like pulling the first thorn from rotting flesh. The pain and the wound remained. On the carriage ride back to Tingsu Tower, Xiao Chengyan handed me a small handwarmer. I accepted it. Your Highness, do you think I may become like them? He did not answer immediately. The carriage lamp swayed as he studied my eyes. They harmed others to seize things that never belonged to them. You fought back to protect what should always have been yours. I tightened my hands around the warmer. That is different, he said. Different? Entirely different. Those words opened a small crack in the frozen place inside my heart. After returning to the Duke of Zhengguo's residence, I took out the Qingluan Jade Pendant. Since the events at the villa, it had carried a faint warmth. I inserted a silver hairpin beside the bird's eye, and gently lifted this time. The base of the pendant made a tiny click. A sheet of gold foil as thin as a cicada's wing slid from a hidden layer. There were bloodstains on it, along with mother's handwriting. If I die, investigate the grain accounts. Investigate Madame Liu. Investigate Chen Hongru. The final warning was nearly blurred by blood, and I studied it in the lamplight for a long time before recognizing 3 more characters. The second prince. My hand slowly tightened. The final enemy remained behind the palace. Walls. It rained on the night before the wedding. The sound struck the window lattice like countless sleepless nights in the neglected courtyard of my previous life. I sat before the mirror while Qingdai arranged my hair. The woman in the reflection was slender and sharp-eyed, with none of the former fearfulness. The phoenix crown rested nearby, its golden wings half spread in the candlelight like a bird preparing to fly. Qingdai's eyes reddened. My lady, tomorrow you will be married. I smiled. Why are you crying? You are coming with me to the regent's residence, she sniffed. I am happy. If Madame Shen can see from the heavens, she must be happy too. At the mention of mother, I touched the Qingluan Jade Pendant. The gold foil had already been delivered to Xiao Chengyuan. In recent days, the regent's residence, the Duke of Zhengguo's household, and the capital prefecture had moved at the same time. The Renji Hall case, the old military grain case, and mother's poisoning were joined into a single chain. Madame Liu was imprisoned. Chenrojia was expelled from the clan register and awaited exile. Lu Jingheng was implicated not only in plotting against the future princess consort, but also in contacts between the Earl of Ningyuan's household and the second prince's faction. The Earl's residence had been sealed. Father submitted a memorial confessing guilt, but it was too late. The emperor revoked the household's right to inherit the Marquis of Yongning title for 3 generations, reduced the marquisate by 1 rank, dismissed father from office, and confined him at home pending investigation. The true mastermind, however, had not yet been caught. Xiao Chengyuan sent word that assassins might attack on the wedding route. The second prince's faction would not wait for the old case to be decided. They intended to kill Xiao Chengyuan during the procession and shift the blame to the Duke of Zhengguo's household, accusing the Shen family of rebellion. That was how my maternal family had fallen in my previous life. This time I would never allow it. The rain stopped at dawn. I put on my wedding robes, and the phoenix crown settled heavily over my hair. For a moment, I remembered Chen Rujia standing before my bed in magnificent clothing in my previous life. She had said she stole my life. But a life was not a robe or a pendant. It did not belong to another person merely because she seized it. I had fought mine back from blood and water with my own hands. Wedding drums and music sounded from the far end of the long street. I lowered the red veil, and Uncle Shen Lin carried me out through the gates. Father stood not far from the Duke's residence. He looked haggard and seemed to have aged 10 years in one night. His lips moved as though he wanted to speak. I did not stop. He had possessed countless chances to become my father. He had rejected every one of them. Outside the gate, Xiao Chengyuan sat on horseback in crimson wedding robes. The man who usually looked cold and distant appeared breathtaking in red. I could not see his face clearly through the veil, but I heard him dismount and approach. Chen Chengning. Yes? I have come to take you home. Those 4 simple words brought heat to my eyes. I was helped into the bridal sedan, and the procession began moving slowly. Crowds packed both sides of the street. Some said the regent was finally marrying. Some said eldest, young Lady Chen, had reached happiness after suffering. Others discussed the terrible scandals that had engulfed the Marquis of Yongning's household in recent days. When the sedan reached Vermilion Bird Bridge, the horses suddenly reared. Weapons were drawn outside. The assassins had arrived. Qingdai whispered beside the sedan. My lady? I lifted one corner of the veil. My voice remained steady. Follow the plan. At once, windows opened along the second floors of the nearby shops. Archers from the Duke of Zhengguo's household appeared. Secret guards from the regent's residence rushed out from among the crowd and surrounded the assassins at the center of the bridge. The attackers had clearly not expected us to be prepared. Their leader still tried to break through toward Xiao Chengyuan. I saw Chengyuan draw his sword. His red robe swept through the air and the blade flashed like snow. The old poison in his chest had not been fully cured, so he could not fight for long. I opened the sedan curtain, took out the medicine pill prepared in advance, and told Xuning to deliver it. Xiao Chengyuan swallowed it and looked back at me. Across the crowd I could not read his eyes, but I saw him give a slight nod. I lowered the curtain and tightened my grip on the red love knot in my hand. Half an hour later, every assassin had been captured. When the mask was removed from one, he proved to be the commander of the second prince's personal guards. The crowd erupted. Xiao Chengyuan had not given them the chance to kill themselves. His guards had restrained them and removed the poison capsules hidden in their mouths beforehand. The more decisive evidence was a troop command talisman found on the leader. Its mark matched the secret seal used in letters from the old military grain case. The old crime and the assassination were finally connected. The wedding procession did not remain stopped for long. Xiao Chengyuan came beside the sedan and asked softly, Are you afraid? I lifted the veil and saw a small streak of blood on his wedding robe. No. I held out the love knot. Your Highness, give me your hand. He paused, then obediently extended it. I tied the red knot around his wrist. Today is our wedding. Do not think only about capturing criminals. Take care of yourself as well. He looked at the knot, and a faint smile appeared in his eyes. Very well. The procession continued toward the regent's residence. Meanwhile, imperial guards had already surrounded the second prince's residence. That night, news came from the palace. The second prince had colluded with former officials, embezzled military grain, poisoned upright ministers, and ordered the assassination of the regent. The evidence was conclusive, and he was imprisoned by the imperial clan court. The Empress Dowager was confined in Shouan Palace. Madame Liu was sentenced to exile 3,000 li away for poisoning the principal wife, embezzling her dowry, and plotting against the future princess consort. Chen Rujia, for falsely claiming credit for saving His Highness, harming her elder half-sister, the household's legitimate daughter, and taking part in the scheme to compromise my reputation, was expelled from the Chen clan and exiled with Madame Liu. Lu Jinghing was stripped of his hereditary status, and the Earl of Ningyuan's residence was confiscated. Father lost his title, and the Marquis of Yongning's household declined from that day onward. When the news reached the regent's residence, I had just entered the bridal chamber. Red candles burned high and festive draperies hung around me. Sitting on the bed and listening to faint celebration outside, I felt as if an entire lifetime separated me from my past. In my previous life there had been no wedding robe, no red candles, and no one coming to take me home, only a lamp dying in the neglected courtyard. The door opened. Xiao Chengyuan entered. He had changed his outer robe, and his face was somewhat pale, but the love knot remained tied securely around his wrist. He came before me and lifted the veil. In the candlelight, he looked at me for a long time. I became self-conscious. "What is your highness looking at?" "My princess, your highness has become skilled at sweet words today. Only with you." I froze. He sat beside me and gave me a bouquet box. Inside lay the King Luan Jade Pendant and mother's gold foil. The foil had been carefully sealed. Beside it was an official document clearing the old case and declaring Shen Mingtong's death unjust, as well as the exoneration of the Duke of Zhengguo's household in the military grain affair. I looked at the document and tears finally fell. Xiao Chengyuan did not tell me to stop crying. He simply sat quietly beside me. I wept for a long time. For the self who died in the neglected courtyard, for the mother who planned for me and was murdered, for my maternal family who had suffered false accusation, and for this life in which I no longer had to endure in silence. When I had finished, I wiped my tears and looked at him. "Your Highness, you once said that I no longer needed to be anyone's discarded daughter." He nodded. "Then may I become a willful princess consort?" Amusement entered his eyes. "How willful?" "I want to reopen the shops my mother left me. I also want to establish a women's academy and a charity hall. I want women without protection to have at least one place where they can learn accounting, medicine, and the skills needed to survive." After listening, Xiao Chengyuan said only, "Take whatever you need from the Regent's treasury." I laughed. "I have a dowry." "Then use your dowry. I will provide the people." I looked at him. He did not intend to hide me in an inner courtyard. He listened seriously to what I wanted to do. He gave me respect, a place beside him, and a future in which I did not have to fear being too sharp. The red candles crackled. He took my hand, his fingers warm. "Chin-chingning. Yes? If there are storms ahead, we face them together." I tightened my hand around his. Together. 3 months after our marriage, the capital had changed completely. The first decree issued after the young emperor assumed personal rule ordered a new investigation into the old military grain case on the northern frontier. The Duke of Zhengguo's household was fully exonerated. Grandfather donned his armor once more to enter the palace and give thanks. When he left the palace that day, he came to see me at the regent's residence. Sitting in the flower hall and drinking tea, I served with my own hands. His eyes remained red. "If your mother could see you now, she would finally be at peace." I lowered my head and touched the King Luan Jade Pendant. "I think she can see." I went personally when Renji Hall reopened. The shop had been completely restored, but its old name remained above the door. Manager Zhou returned as the resident physician. He knelt at the entrance and wept uncontrollably. I helped him rise. "Manager Zhou, from now on Renji Hall will not only sell medicine, it will also accept female apprentices. Any woman of good character who wishes to learn medicine may come." He nodded repeatedly. Qingdai smiled beside me. "My lady, people should call you Princess Consort now." I smiled too. Inside Renji Hall, "Continue calling me my lady. It is what mother was accustomed to hearing." Qingdai's eyes reddened again. She had become the senior attendant in the regent's inner household and was much steadier than before. Swaning occasionally came with messages, and she always found 1 or 2 faults in his conduct. The two bickered whenever they met, adding a great deal of life to the residence. As for the Chain family, the plaque of the Marquis of Yongning was removed. Father moved to a small house in the southern part of the city. He once sent a letter asking to see me. He wrote at length about regret. He said he dreamed constantly of mother and of me as a child. I did not meet him. I returned the letter with only one sentence: "Belated regret need not be brought before me." The old madam fell seriously ill and was later taken away by a collateral branch of the clan. Before leaving, she also wanted to see me. I went. She lay on a couch, her hair completely white. Holding my hand, she cried, "Changning, it was not that grandmother never cared for you. The Marquis's household was in such difficulty." I withdrew my hand. "Grandmother, what you cared for was the Marquis's household, not me." She had no answer. I did not hate her enough to wish her dead, but neither was I forgiving enough to pretend nothing had happened. Some people did not require revenge. Staying away from them for the rest of one's life was the best conclusion. Madame Liu and Chenrojia were exiled from the capital. I did not go to watch them leave. Later I heard that Chenrojia still refused to accept her fate on the road. She cursed Madame Liu for ruining her life, while Madame Liu called her stupid. Mother and daughter fought at a courier station and were whipped by the guards escorting them. Madame Liu eventually died of illness in the place of exile. Chen Rojia stole another prisoner's dry rations and had one leg broken in the beating. She did not survive the winter. When the news reached me, I was teaching several girls at the academy to read an account book. A timid girl of 12 or 13 asked, "Princess Consort, is it truly useful for women to learn accounting?" Looking into her bright but uncertain eyes, I remembered Mother sitting by a window many years earlier, teaching me to recognize the names of shops. I smiled. It is useful. When a woman has control of her own accounts, she can feel secure. Mother had given that sentence to me, now I gave it to more women. Xiao Chengyuan's poison was also gradually cleared. Manager Zhou and the imperial physicians adjusted his prescription together. After half a year, the cold pain in his chest during rainy weather had eased greatly. One rainy night, I returned to the Regent's residence from Renji Hall and found him beneath the corridor, reading memorials. I walked over and touched his fingertips warm. He raised his eyes. "My princess has become very practiced at inspections. If your highness drank your medicine on time, I would not have to inspect you." He put down the memorial. "Were you tired today?" I sat beside him, leaning against a pillar and watching drops fall from the eaves. Tired but happy. Renji Hall has opened a women's medical hall, and Mother's charity hall has also been restored. Among the first students are a widow driven out by a wealthy family, a merchant's daughter who refused to be sold as a concubine, and a woman despised by her relatives. When they arrive, their eyes are full of fear. But when they learn to write the name of their first medicine or balance their first account book, their eyes begin to shine. I watched the rain. That light makes me feel that this rebirth was not only for revenge. Xiao Chengyuan listened quietly. "Madame Shen would be proud of you," he said. My nose stung. "And you?" He looked at me. I deliberately asked, "Does your highness think I spend every day on these matters and fail to behave like a quiet princess consort?" He laughed softly. "I did not marry you so that you would remain quiet." The rain sounded gentle and my heart softened. "Then why did you marry me?" He took my hand. "So that whatever you wish to do, you are able to do." I looked at him and suddenly remembered our first meeting after my rebirth. Chen Rujia had fallen into the water beside the pavilion. I stood holding the pendant, filled with strength and hatred. He stood beneath the bamboo shadows and did not ask why I was ruthless or rushed to judge right and wrong. Later, as he came closer, step by step, he never took the blade from my hand. He only blocked the people who wanted to break my wrist. I leaned against his shoulder. "Xiao Chengyuan." "Yes, thank you for recognizing me." He lowered his head. "Not merely recognizing you." I looked up. His expression was serious. "Choosing you." I paused, then smiled. That winter, the plum blossoms in the Regent's residence were especially beautiful. I moved Mother's memorial tablet into a newly built ancestral hall. Grandfather came in person to offer incense, and Xiao Qingyuan knelt beside me on the prayer cushion. As incense smoke rose, I placed the Qingluan Jade Pendant before the altar. "Mother, I have returned. Not to the Marquis's residence, not to the previous life. I have returned to my own life." I had reclaimed the pendant, the dowry, the truth, and the self who had once been pushed into the water, imprisoned in a neglected courtyard and abandoned by everyone. People in the capital continued to speak of the pond incident. Some said eldest young ladykin was hard to bring down. Some said the princess consort was formidable. Others said that if I had not kicked my half-sister into the pond, perhaps none of the later chaos would have happened. I only laughed. If I had not sent her into the water, I would have fallen instead. My reputation would have been destroyed. I would still have died in the neglected courtyard. The world always advised women to be tolerant, yet rarely asked whether the pond water was cold. I knew exactly how cold it was. That was why in this life I pulled myself out with my own hands. Many years later, Renji Hall had become the largest medical academy for women in the capital. The charity hall also sheltered many women who had nowhere else to go. Xiao Chengyuan's poison was fully cured. Once the court became stable, he voluntarily returned most of his military authority. Retaining only his noble title and honor, we sometimes returned to Fawa Temple. The ice on the cold pool had long melted into clear spring water. Plum branches leaned across it. I stood at the bank and touched the old scar on my hand. Xiao Chengyuan came from behind and placed a cloak over my shoulders. "Thinking of the past again?" I shook my head. "Not the past. Then what?" I looked at my reflection in the water. "A new life." He took my hand and stood beside me. The wind made the Qingluan Jade Pendant tap lightly against my chest with a clear sound like Mother's laughter. Fate had finally turned the page and begun writing anew. In this life I was no longer Chen Chengning, whose life could be stolen. I was the regent's princess consort. I was Shin Mingtong's daughter. I was the mistress of Renji Hall and the Women's Academy. And I was the woman who had been reborn from the pond, then shattered the nightmare of her previous life with her own hands. Bonus story: the regent's residence was lively again today. After our marriage, I discovered something about Xiao Chengyuan. On the surface, he was cold as ice, intimidating the imperial court so thoroughly that members of the second prince's faction had once suffered nightmares merely from hearing his name. In private, however, he could be remarkably petty, especially after I opened the Women's Academy. When the academy first began, its students were mostly girls and women with nowhere else to depend upon. Some studied medicine, some studied accounting, some learned to read, and several of the younger children could not even move the beads of an abacus correctly. They had nevertheless learned to cling to my legs and wheedle affection from me. One 6-year-old girl was named Ali. She had a round face, enormous eyes, and an exceptionally sweet tongue. The first time she saw me, she cried, "Big sister princess, you are so beautiful." I was delighted on the spot and rewarded her with a plate of osmanthus cakes. From that day onward, Ali came every day. She hugged me as soon as she arrived, then announced before everyone in the room, "Big sister princess is the most beautiful woman under heaven today too." King Dai laughed until she bent over. The other students joined in teasing me. I was in an excellent mood that day, so on my return to the regent's residence, I brought Xiao Chengyuan a packet of freshly made osmanthus candy. The moment I entered, I saw His Highness seated beneath the corridor with a book in his hands, his face as pale and cool as early winter frost. I walked over. "Your Highness returned early today." He glanced at me. Only one syllable. I placed the candy in front of him. "I brought this for you." He looked at it but did not move. I raised an eyebrow. "You do not like it?" I would not dare. I blinked. "It is only a packet of candy. What is there to fear?" He raised his eyes to me. "After all, I am not the most beautiful person under heaven." Swanning stood nearby, his head lowered toward the ground and his shoulders trembling. Qingdai was less restrained. She burst out laughing. Xiao Chengyuan gave her a cold look. She immediately covered her mouth. I heard nothing. Sunxiang maintained a solemn expression. I heard nothing either. The regent was jealous of a 6-year-old girl. The courtyard fell silent. Xiao Chengyuan put down his book. Sunxiang's expression changed. "I am here." Run 20 laps around the training ground. Suning left. Qingdai finally gave up and laughed while holding the corridor pillar. My shoulders shook as well. Xiao Chengyuan looked at me, his tone even colder. "What is the princess consort laughing at?" I sat beside him and answered with deliberate seriousness. "I am wondering whether I should tell Ali tomorrow that His Highness is sad because he does not believe himself the most beautiful person under heaven." Xiao Chengyuan narrowed his eyes. I continued. "She will certainly comfort you. She will say, 'Big brother Regent, you are the second most beautiful person under heaven.'" Sunying, who had taken only 2 steps away, slipped and nearly fell. Xiao Chengyuan remained silent for a moment, then, without expression, he picked up the packet and ate one piece. "Is it sweet?" I asked. He looked at me. I blinked. "How can osmanthus candy be sour?" Qingdai whispered. "Perhaps it is His Highness's heart that is sour." This time, Shuang did not dare turn his head. He ran away quickly. Half a year after the academy opened, the regent's residence had completely lost its old quiet. What sort of place had it once been? Even the stone lions at the gate looked more imposing than those of other households. Citizens of the capital lowered their voices when passing, afraid of disturbing the residence's silence. Now, every morning, young students lined up to enter. Some carried books, some carried medicine boxes, and some carried abacuses. 2 of the smallest walked while gnawing buns nearly larger than their faces. The gatekeepers went from reacting, as though facing an enemy army, to expertly identifying who had forgotten a book and who had failed to finish yesterday's assignment. The most absurd incident began. When Ali heard that Xiao Chengyuan's old poison required nourishment, she became extremely worried. One morning, she brought the 3 youngest children into the regent's garden to dig for earthworms. When I arrived, all their hands were covered in mud. Ali raised a small jar and offered it to me like a treasure. "Big sister princess, this is for big brother Regent to strengthen his body." My vision darkened. Qingdai asked stiffly, "What is it?" "Big black worms," Ali said proudly. Another child explained. Ali said, "Chickens grow strong from eating worms, so big brother Regent will grow strong too." Qingdai, Suanying, and I stared at them. At that moment, Xiao Chengyuan appeared at the end of the corridor. He wore a moon-white robe and looked as elegant as a painting, until Li charged toward him with the jar. "Big brother Regent, this is the tonic we brought you." His steps stopped. For the first time, I saw genuine stiffness on his face. Ali enthusiastically opened the jar. Several earthworms twisted inside. Xiao Chengyuan was silent. Xuaning's face reddened from suppressing laughter. Qingdai secretly pinched her own thigh. I coughed and forced myself to maintain the dignity of a princess consort. Ali, Big Brother Regent does not eat worms. She was shocked. Why? I considered the question seriously. Because Big Brother Regent is a picky eater. Xiao Chengyuan slowly turned his gaze toward me. I pretended not to notice. Ali looked deeply distressed. It is bad to be picky. Big Brother Regent will not grow tall. Xuaning finally broke. He turned away and laughed aloud. He was sent to run another 20 laps around the training ground. Qingdai watched his fleeing back and sighed. Lord Xungying has been in excellent health lately. I nodded. The food at the Regent's residence is nourishing. Xiao Chengyuan added calmly. Perhaps laughing so much has improved his circulation. Qingdai immediately closed her mouth. I tugged his sleeve, still holding back laughter. Do not be angry. The children meant well. He looked down at me. Then does the princess consort intend for me to accept them? I looked at Ali's expectant eyes, then at the jar of earthworms. The kindness can be accepted, I said with difficulty. The worms should be released. Ali cheered. Big sister princess is so kind. I had just relaxed when she added, tomorrow we will catch bigger ones. Xiao Chengyuan turned and walked away. I hurried after him. Where are you going? Without looking back, he answered. To practice with my sword. I laughed. Why? To defend myself against insects. Once the residence became lively, the most tormented person was not Xiao Chengyuan. It was Sunying. The academy's children were not afraid of him. At first he maintained a stern face, believing the chief of the Regent's secret guards ought to possess some authority. The first time Ali saw him, she looked up and asked, Uncle, why do you always wear black? Are you afraid of washing clothes? His face darkened. She asked again, Do you not have any other clothes? The next day, Sunying changed into dark gray. Ali saw him, studied him, and nodded thoughtfully. It still looks unwashed. Sunying fell silent on the spot. Qingdai laughed the entire day. Later, Ali and several other children became fascinated with a game called Catch the Assassin. They believed that since Sunying always appeared without sound, he was especially suitable to play the assassin. Every afternoon after class, they chased him through the garden. Xuanying's light-footed martial arts were exceptional, and normally no one could catch him. Children, however, had their own methods. They placed cakes beneath trees, candied hawthorn in corners, and hid a wooden sign behind an artificial hill that read Atet Aetet Aeons Oniete. Swing initially ignored them. Then one day, Ali added another crooked line beneath the sign. Uncle Sunying does not dare come because he is afraid of losing. Sunying stared at those uneven characters for a long time, then he entered. The instant he stepped inside, a fishing net dropped over his head. A group of little girls rushed out and shouted excitedly, We caught the assassin! Xuanying stood beneath the net as though his soul had left his body. Qingdai happened to pass with a bowl of medicine. At the sight, she laughed so hard that she nearly spilled it. Lord Sunying truly has remarkable skill. His face was expressionless. They ambushed me, Qingdai nodded. Of course. A 6-year-old ambushing the chief of the secret guards is indeed very dangerous. That evening, Xuanying volunteered for night patrol. I asked Xiao Chengyuan, was his pride injured? Without looking up from his book, he said, No. Then what happened? He is afraid they will catch him again tomorrow. I collapsed onto the couch laughing. The academy was not always filled only with amusement. Some children arrived unable even to raise their heads. One 13-year-old girl named Xiaomin had been sold by her uncle and aunt to become the concubine of a merchant more than 50 years old. When she escaped, she wore only a worn padded jacket, and dark bruises covered her wrists. At first, whenever a man spoke near Renji Hall, she trembled. I allowed her to begin by washing herbs in the dispensary. Her hands were skillful, and she learned quickly, but she never smiled. One day, Ali pushed an abacus in front of her. Sister Shesman, help me calculate who is more beautiful, Big Brother Regent or Big Sister Princess. Shesman stared blankly. Ali counted on her fingers. Big Sister Princess is beautiful 100 times. Big Brother Regent is beautiful 99 times. Xiaomin asked quietly, Why is Big Brother Regent one less? Ali answered with complete conviction. Because Big Brother Regent is too cold. If you look at him too long, your face freezes. Xiaomin burst out laughing. It was the first time she had laughed since arriving at the academy. I stood outside the doorway and watched a little light return to her eyes. Warmth filled my chest. That night, I told Xiao Chengyuan about it. After listening, he was silent for a long time. You did very well. I leaned by the window and smiled. Does your highness not think I interfere in too many people's affairs? He looked at me. If someone had interfered in your affairs long ago, you would not have been forced to endure so many years in the Marquis's residence. I froze. He came over and adjusted the cloak around my shoulders. So from now on, interfere as much as you wish. I looked down at his hand and felt both like crying and laughing. If your highness continues indulging me, are you not afraid I will turn the regent's residence into another women's academy? Xiao Chengyuan considered it seriously. It is nearly one already. I stared at him. But that is also good, he added. What is good about it? He looked outside. Ali was leading several children in pursuit of Xuanying. Xingdai stood nearby, bent over with laughter. Xuanying wanted to escape, but because the children were small, he did not dare use his full speed, and could only circle the courtyard again and again. A faint smile appeared in Xiao Chengyuan's eyes. It is lively. I remembered how silent the regent's residence had been when I first married, like a palace carved from cold jade. Now there was laughter, footsteps, children reciting lessons incorrectly, Qingdai scolding them, Xuying sighing because he had again been forced to play the assassin, and Xiao Chengyuan occasionally rendered speechless by anger. I held his hand. Does your highness like liveliness? He looked at me. I did not before. And now he tightened his hand around mine. Now I do. I smiled. Because of the academy? He shook his head. Because of you later, Ali finally learned that earthworms could not nourish a person. She was deeply disappointed, but soon found a new tonic. One day, Xiao Chengyuan returned from the palace and found a bowl of black soup outside his study. Beside it was a paper covered in Ali's crooked handwriting. Big brother Regent will become strong after drinking this. Xiao Chengyuan stared at the bowl for a long time. Xuanying leaned close, sniffed, and changed expression. Your highness, it looks like a failed batch of 10-ingredient great tonic soup from the kitchen. Qingdai passed by and added, I think she also put sugar in it. Why? Xuanying asked. Ali said that if it were too bitter, his highness would cry. When I arrived, Xiao Chengyuan was holding the bowl, with an expression more solemn than the one he wore at court. Do not drink it, I said quickly. Ali poked her head around the door. Big brother Regent will not drink it? Xiao Chengyuan stopped. She blinked her large eyes. I cooked it for a very long time, my heart sank. Xiao Chengyuan appeared cold, but he was soft-hearted toward children, and could not bear their expectations. Sure enough, after a moment of silence, he lifted the bowl and drank a mouthful. His entire body became rigid. Xuanying's eye widened. Drew in a breath. I hurriedly asked, How is it? Xiao Chengyuan put down the bowl. His voice was frighteningly calm. Not bad. Ali cheered. I looked into the soup. It was glossy black and so thick that a chopstick could stand upright in it, refusing to believe it could be that terrible. I touched the tip of a chopstick to it and tasted a trace. In that instant, I understood the meaning of all 5 flavors arriving at once: bitter, sweet, salty, sour, and spicy, followed by an indescribable, burnt aftertaste that surged back across my tongue. I looked at Xiao Chengyuan with solemn respect. Your highness's endurance is extraordinary. He looked at me. The princess consort taught me well. What did I teach you? Never disappoint a child's sincere kindness. That night, Xiao Chengyuan drank 3 cups of plain tea. Outside, Xuanying asked, Your highness, should I summon an imperial physician? No. Then should I investigate what was placed in the soup? The room was silent for a breath. No need. Xuanying sounded confused. Why? Xiao Chengyuan replied without expression, Knowing will make it worse. I laughed so hard that I almost rolled off the couch. Afterward, Ali's great tonic soup became forbidden conversation in the regent's residence. Anyone who mentioned it received a single look from Xiao Chengyuan. Ali did not know. She knew only that big brother Regent had drunk her soup and praised it. Her confidence grew. The second time, she planned to cook for Xuanying. When Xuanying heard, he volunteered that very night for a half-month mission outside the capital. Xiao Chengyuan approved it. I asked, You are truly letting him leave? He has followed me for many years. Xiao Chengyuan answered calmly. His crimes do not deserve such punishment. I laughed until my stomach hurt. When Qingdai learned the news, she chased Xuanying to the gate and shouted, Lord Xuanying, take care on the road. Ali will save the soup for you until you return. His foot slipped and he nearly fell from his horse. From then onward, Xuanying treated Ali with extraordinary respect, more caution than he showed even me, the princess consort. A year later, the women's academy had grown considerably, and Ali had become a little taller. She no longer caught earthworms to nourish Xiao Chengyuan or cooked black soup to frighten Xuanying. She began learning to write. One day, she handed me a piece of paper. The writing was crooked. May no woman in the world ever fear cold water again. My eyes suddenly burned. Ali looked up. Big sister princess, did I write well? I crouched and stroked her hair. Very well, she smiled. Teacher, said big sister princess, once fell into the water, but later you climbed out by yourself. I want to be as strong as big sister princess. I hugged her gently. Ali, you do not need to fall into the water as I did. She did not understand as I whispered. You need only keep walking forward. That night, I showed the page to Xiao Chengyuan. He studied it for a long time, then placed it in the deepest box inside his study. Why are you keeping it? I asked. This is the first achievement of the academy founded by my princess. I laughed. A child's writing counts as an achievement? He looked at me. It counts. I leaned beside him, my heart impossibly soft. Moonlight filled the window. Outside came King Dai's scolding voice. Ali, do not put candied hawthorn inside Lord Shuning's scabbard again. Xuanying cried in despair. That is my sword, Ali answered righteously. But the scabbard looks like a bamboo tube. Xiao Chengyuan and I looked at each other and laughed at the same time. That laughter seemed to blow far away the cold pond, old resentment, blood debts, and injustice of the past. I once believed rebirth was meant for revenge. Later I understood that revenge merely closed the door on the old life. True rebirth was the noisy, warm, ordinary life waiting beyond that door. Children called me Big Sister Princess. Qingdai laughed beside me. Xuanying was forced to practice his light-footed martial arts every day. Xiao Chengyuan sat at my side and allowed me to transform his silent residence into half a women's academy, and I could finally wake on every ordinary morning without fearing that someone would steal my pendant, destroy my reputation, or push me into the water. I needed only wonder how many new students Renji Hall would accept that day, whether Ali had written her characters properly, whether Xiao Chengyuan had taken his medicines on time, and above all, how to keep Ali out of the kitchen. Otherwise, sooner or later, one bowl of her soup would nearly kill half the regent's household.